What's going on, everyone? It is Jeranism here. It is Sunday morning, so happy Sunday morning to you. I'm going to make sure that everybody hears me, and then we'll continue. So somebody chat. If you do hear me and we are live, then we can get going. So glad you guys are here. Basically, I have with me John the Morgile. John, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, man? Doing very well. It's just a beautiful, beautiful Sunday morning. A little chilly. Got the heater on, but hey, that's okay. I'm doing great, man. How about yourself?
Doing fantastic. So yeah, I guess everybody does hear us. So we're live. Good time to go live because I'm going to bring up this screen now. Hopefully everyone can see that in a second. Screen share. We are watching live, and as of now, we got the blue screen. So I want to make sure everybody sees that. And do you see that, John?
Yeah, I see that. So I guess we can end the video now because
Totally.
we haven't even gone 5 minutes and we've lost the 24-hour feed. So
So I have that up. Let me see if I can bring this up.
see y'all later. Be nice to each other. No, I'm kidding.
Let's see here. Okay. I think I see it. Okay. And do you see the blue screen? Just make sure everybody else can see that at home so we're on the right little page here. If I did this right, I'm shocked.
Yeah, you're on Ustream, and where is the thing where it's like ISS question mark, or did they change that
You
already?
can actually see how they've got some different screens down here now. I don't know if you can see this. Let me see if it'll let me even move this. Hello. Wake up. Let me see here. Hold on one second. I'm gonna try something different.
I'm watching the live stream, and looks like you're definitely presenting. So yeah, and the commenters are saying they can see, so we're golden.
Beautiful.
Golden bear.
Golden bear. So what's new with you? Anything?
No, man, same old stuff. Just put out a few videos recently. It's sort of hard to find my stuff because it's scattered amongst 3 different channels. As you know, I noticed that your videos have gotten down to the 15-minute threshold or less. So I realized that you're battling with the copyright
Well, I'm
strike.
actually back, believe it or not, or else I wouldn't be able to be doing this.
Oh, that's right. You're live streaming, so I assume that you won the appeal. Good on
I
you,
did.
mate. Yeah, awesome.
I was definitely I was actually under 2 strikes, so it was.
Ooh,
Wow.
that is very scary.
Yeah, it was definitely was sweating it. But no, luckily won those, and so we're back at it. And so thank everybody for joining us. What I wanted to do, and the reason for the name of the video, is if you've seen my most recent video in which I'm asking NASA for a 24/7 feed of the Earth, which should go without question. Before we have fake pictures of Pluto and fake pictures of planets, and before we find out all these crazy spaceships are flying at 13 billion miles from here, we should have a view of the Earth. And if if anything, we have already a orbiting spacecraft supposedly, which makes no sense that you wouldn't just simply strap some cameras to it, point it at the Earth, and show the Earth. So the fact that they don't always had me questioning things. And the more I've looked into it, and the more I've tried to do some research on it, I've basically figured out that the reason why they can't is because it would take them a lot of, they just wouldn't be able to do it. In order to do it, in order to fake it, they would need to make sure that their orbits were perfectly timed, that as far as the sunrise and sunset, it would need to be perfectly timed. So instead, what they do is they put this blue screen up, like the one we're seeing now. By putting that up there, they can bridge the time between when they show a sunrise and a sunset. And so this will come back on in a few moments, whenever it does, and it will be a regular screen. Like, you won't see a sunrise or sunset because they skipped that time where the sun rose or sunset. So I basically, by doing that, figured out that it's about every 45 minutes, at the most. 45 minutes is when they have to go to a blue screen or they have to cut the transmission. And so the bet is $1,000 to all the people who have been commenting. And if you go to that video, you can see comment after comment from people who will drop a link to this feed and say, here's the proof, 24/7 footage. And it just baffles me, the amount of people who believe it and the amount of people who trust in NASA who have never done any looking into this. And I understand it. I mean, look at me 3-4 years ago when I hear that there's, a camera on the Earth. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to go check it out. You see that there's the Earth going by underneath you. You see the camera footage and you just go, okay, they've got camera footage of the Earth, and you move on. And that's what I know, 90% of the world has done. And they have not looked into it. They have not watched it to see what is going on. Why are we cutting out? And if people don't know, and John and I have seen it because we do ISS live all the time, that when they show the night views of Earth, it'll just be a black screen. You might see some weird red flares, little things kind of flying around, but you won't see the lights. You won't see the lightning. But then they'll bring up these beautiful, 2 or 3 days later, you'll see on YouTube or different venues, they'll have that beautiful view of the night going by and all the light ups from all the city. It's just ridiculous. It's nonsense that we wouldn't be able to see that live. And when I bring that up to like Red's Rhetoric, he likes to say, well, they don't have the cameras set to show that. I said, well, they obviously are setting the cameras to record that because we're seeing it 3 days after. So why can't we just set it that way 3 days before? And I'll get every excuse. And that's the thing. People will accept these excuses. It's nonsense. It simply is a lie. It's deception. There's a reason for it. And, I also got people who were commenting and saying, oh, I thought you said this was fake. Now you're asking NASA to put up a 24/7 cam. And I said, yeah, I'm playing a game here. The game is they can't do it. And I know that. So once you have somebody in the corner like that, you can play a game with them. And I can play a game with NASA by saying, show me a 24/7 video feed. Show me the Earth for 24 hours a day. They can't even do it for one day, let alone an hour. I know they can.
Or even 30 minutes. And, on your point, it's so funny because I don't know if you, and I'm not going to quote exact figures, but I remember growing up, one of the big things about taking things to space is it's very, very expensive to take even very lightweight things to space because they have to calculate right down to the very ounce, so that they can get their propulsion correct. And so, cameras are almost, you could consider them a luxury commodity that, yeah, they want to have some cameras, but not too many of them. But they bring, gorilla suits, guitars, tons of water, flutes, and by the way, all these different things that obviously weigh something. But it seems like they never fortify the ISS. Of course, they build onto it. They add, lengthy segments to it. But in terms of like what I mean, fortification would be like layers and layers of radiation shielding, or possibly like sturdier hatches between segments, or even, just making sure that everything remains sealed. Because, I mean, anybody that's done any sort of engineering to any sort of object that's under stress, and yes, the ISS would be under lots of different stresses over the years, you're eventually going to have mechanical breakdowns, mechanical problems. And it just appears that, structurally over the last 15, 16 years, the ISS has sort of been immune to this, but you don't ever see them, or you don't ever, as far as I know, maybe I'm wrong, maybe someone can correct me on this, but as far as I can tell, they're not too concerned with fortifying the ISS in terms of making it sturdier, making it more resistant to things like radiation. To me, it just seems like they're more interested in bringing up, guitars and gorilla suits and flutes, and not too many cameras. And, you're right, the nighttime footage, if you can ever catch nighttime footage, you don't ever see street lights or city lights from space. You don't ever see lightning bolts, which would be extremely important to the tornado predictors, but NASA keeps that from them for some reason. But 3 days later, bada bing, bada boom, a little CGI technology, a little magic, little movie magic, and you've got street lights and lightning bolts. So, yeah, there you have it.
The other thing I keep seeing is people saying, well, how do you explain the Himawari? Is that how you say it? The Japanese satellite that's up there. They say that shows pictures of the Earth constantly. And it's like, people just don't get it. I'm like, do you understand that that could be done with a high altitude plane? It's simply taking photos of the Earth and the cloud layers and then shooting them down, and they superimpose it on a ball. It's not, it's like so easy.
Are you talking about the one where it sort of shows, it's, I guess you would say, a geostationary satellite, and it shows the terminating line of the sun coming in at sort of a 45-degree angle from left to right, and then or top to bottom, left to right, and then exiting the that terminating line, sort of going up and left as a geostationary position, which, you know, technically that is what you should see. But if you look at NASA's precursors to faking that same sort of geostationary thing, they forgot to add in those 45, or I guess it would be, you know, 23.4 degree, whatever, tilt or angle of that terminating line. So either the Japanese are lying or they actually got it right. Whereas in the past, NASA has done something very similar to that and they got it wrong. So there you go.
Yeah, it's nonsense. And that whole thing, it just makes it's so upsetting. And what did the other person say today? One of the funniest comments I saw was they said it's actually really hard to get a continuous picture of the Earth because the ISS is going around the curved Earth, which is actually proof that the Earth is a sphere, that it cuts out intermittently. I said, oh my God. I mean, what people will consider proof is ridiculous. And that's what I'm trying to get across to people, is that NASA does everything they can to get as close as they can without proving it, because they can't. I mean, if they had a 24/7 footage and everyone said, oh, you'll just say it's fake. I said, how could I say it's fake? The reason I can say things are fake is because they leave that little bit at the end open, because it's fake. When I'm saying, you know, if it was real, you wouldn't be able to claim it's fake. I mean, the reason we can get away with saying what we're saying is because it is fake. I mean, it would be real quick to figure out and prove that this stuff was real. If it was a 24/7 view, for instance, and nonstop view of the Earth, it would be easy to prove that that was real. But they won't show you that because, of course, you know the reason, because it's fake. So just so everybody knows about the bet, or what I was talking about there, and I'll be looking over here in the comment section. If anybody wants to, you could bet me by saying this blue screen is up now. So as soon as it comes back from being on break or whatever it is doing, we can start the clock right there. If it goes longer than an hour, you win the money. If it doesn't, I win the money. So what that'll take is somebody commenting down here that they want to bet, and I'll have them email me, and we'll even have them jump on the call, and they can watch it together with us, and we'll see what happens. But I'll just tell you, I am very confident in, as much as I've watched the ISS and as much as I've watched this live footage. And actually, we can just, I actually have on my, you have that on? Okay, so I'm going to go down here and just look at some of these videos down here, just to show people exactly what I'm talking about. And also, I was hoping that they would have one of these side views that I've been watching lately. Yeah, you notice all the blue screens here. It is still on the screen, right, John? You can see what I'm doing?
Yeah, I can see. Let me check the live feed too. Yeah, it looks like you're good to go, buddy.
Okay. So by going to any of these, and if I do see it come back, I'll pop back up there. You could just go to any random view, and we can just start skipping through. So we'll see here we're at 0, and we'll skip ahead to 5, still on. We'll skip ahead to 10, still on. Skip ahead to 15, still on. Oh, it just came back on the other one. Let me scroll up here real quick. Oh. Well, nobody bet, but it's back on with the black screen. So we're at 26 here. There you go. So it took 26 minutes on this screen to go blue. I'm going to go back up here and find a live one. How do you get back to live? Not go live. ISS.
Well, see, that's because the radar dish on the ISS isn't pointing at one of the satellites, and so, right? I mean, or no, gravity. It was gravity, right? I mean, what?
Not some excuse. So this is a night view of the Earth, and so it came back from the blue screen, and this is what I was talking about, because they can't show you that their timing is off. And I don't really know the reason for it, except for, if you think about it, in order for them to have something that shows the live view, it would have to be going 17,500 miles per hour, which we know that a high altitude plane can't go that fast. So that's why they're having to cut in and out. Also, if you can see right here, and I'm sure you can't see it on the live feed, but there is a little dot up here. Could be a star, could be whatever, but no matter what that is, it needs to be moving with the station. The station is moving, so whatever's in the background needs to be moving. It won't move. So we'll just keep it on this screen here and watch. So what time is it now? So we're at 6:30. Okay, so we'll say, well, probably started at 6:25. So I'm writing down 6:25 just so we can see when this goes off again. Although, how could you really count this? I know somebody would if we were betting. But again, this could be just a black screen. So this is what I mean by means of deception. This is a means of deception, that if it were legit, and you've seen all the night views before, you've seen all the beautiful lights. Where are the lights here? You're flying above the earth. Why would there be no street lights? Why would there be no city lights? Why would there be no lightning? Why would there be no sprites? The reason why is because if you ask somebody like Red's Rhetoric, they'll say the camera's not set to show that. But I never understood that. My camera, which costs $250, has autofocus. It knows when to focus and when not to. If you were showing this black screen and there were city lights below, the camera would pick up the city lights. It's ridiculous that we just allow them to, and everybody, oh, it's just NASA, it's too hard to show. It's they're scientific. They must be telling the truth. Oh yeah, you can think that all you want, but what you've done is you've left yourself open for deception, and that's what's happened here. Is we've all left, and I blame myself as well. 2 years ago, I was in the same boat. Believed everything NASA said, didn't even think about it, and it wasn't until you really start looking into it till you see how deceived we have been and how easy it is to detect once you've opened your eyes. I mean, John, you're in the same boat that once you opened your eyes to the truth, it all just kind of starts unfolding for you right in front of you.
Oh, everything pops together. It's like a puzzle. Yeah, absolutely. And this particular sort of feed that we're looking at here, where it's like a perfectly like top down, almost like 90 degrees facing down towards the earth. I think that, and you'll see this during the daytime too, that part looks very, very real, but it also looks very much like high altitude flight. But I think that the reason that you're not going to see city lights is because, one, the atmosphere is way too thick. Even if you were right above, New York, you wouldn't see it from that altitude. But also, they're only covering a very narrow, field of view from this camera angle. Now, when they give you the other camera angle where they've got the huge, apparently fisheye effect of the Earth, where if you look left and right, it's almost like they're saying the Earth is a daisy shape, if you follow my drift. But that is also very obviously faked, and you can take either video editing software or even just still frame editing, like Photoshop, and sort of undo or unwarp that fisheye effect, and you can clearly see that it's just just like all other high altitude observations, it's a flat horizon, and they're really, even from the ISS, they're really only looking at a very small portion of the Earth. Just to give an example, the good old Felix Baumgartner case, where when he pops open the hatch, the horizon's at eye level, but then the next scene is from sort of like way out on a stick, a fisheye camera that shows New Mexico as being about covering about what, 3/4 of the globe. All right, so it's just obviously they're using this sort of trick photography, and I think that they're doing a combination of real footage, trick photography, and CGI to achieve the ISS. And in terms of lightning bolts and city street lights and that sort of thing, that's totally After Effects. It's CGI, and there's even legitimate, just not to like point anybody out or throw anybody under the bus, but God rules. He, in a couple of videos, he's pointed to this supposedly ISS footage where you can see all the lightning bolts and the street lights and the Kármán line, and he's like, and see, this is a real animation. But I've been commenting to him, like, no, dude, it isn't. That you don't actually see any of that from the real live feed. So hopefully, if nothing else, we can get that message out that they, if they're faking some things, then there's no reason to just trust them blindly. We have to verify and assume that they could possibly be faking other things, if not everything.
The whole thing. Exactly. There's no reason why you would go through the steps to deceive unless you have something to hide. So, I mean, I know that they're hiding something. What it is, who knows? But when you start looking into it and you start tearing it apart, that's when things like the curvature start to show up. And that's when things like Antarctica start to show up, and the North Pole. And when you start to put all those together, it leads to nothing else other than the Earth must not be a ball, and the Earth must not be floating out in space, and it's not spinning at crazy speeds and not flying at 66,000 miles per hour. And you just start putting two and two together, and you'll come to the conclusion that it may in fact be flat. It's not that big of a shocker. I've seen so many people, you see the comments all the time, still people with the, well, how is it night in China and, daytime over here? And it'll take a while for everyone to get it. But I definitely think it should be something that's on everyone's mind right now because it's obvious that there's deception going on. And if you're talking about deception from NASA, you're talking about deception from the only people who have ever been to space. And you might say, oh, well, SpaceX has been there. No, not technically. SpaceX goes under the direction of NASA. Has Elon Musk been to space? No. Has anyone who works at SpaceX ever been to space? No. Has Richard Branson been to space? No. It's like when you start putting all these together, you'll see.
Well, he's a space cowboy, but
oh boy, he's a Freemason too. You know, Sir Richard Branson.
Oh yeah,
join the crowd. And so I get a lot of people who make a ton of comments, and I just wanted to put this up there so that anybody watching it in the future can check it out and see that we're being deceived. I mean, still we see nothing but still see this dot here in the background. And if anybody's watching, you can go to I always just type in ISS live in Google search, and it'll be the first link that comes up. And if you go there, and just so everybody knows, I do not have the chat open right now. If you want to email me, if you're interested in the bet, you can just email me at jeranism@yahoo. I do have that open. Watch that to see if anybody is interested in betting. I will advise you not to, but we'll also take the bet if you want to. That's up to you. But they just simply are fooling us. And as long as people allow it, and in fact, not only do people allow it, people argue on the behalf of the deceivers. Mm-hmm. And that's something that is so rare in life to find, that this is what's hard to fight, is you're fighting against not only those deceiving the world, but the 75% that they've deceived, of those they've deceived, will fight on their behalf. We'll go to bat, we'll call you names, we'll fight you fist to fist. I mean, people will fight you if you say that the earth is not a ball in space, because it breaks down their whole life. And I wish I wasn't the one to tell you, but I'm also not going to be the one who just lets it go by with not saying anything. It's like, it's bullshit. It's ridiculous that we were all placed in school where we had no choice to, we weren't told, question your teachers. They might not be telling you the truth. They might be giving you some bullshit. And we were just under the impression that everything that we were being told was the truth. And it made sense, right? That's what you would want out of a society. You would want smart kids who grow up and understand the truth. And then from there, we would be able to invent things and go off on our own way. That's not at all what's going on. It's still not going on to this very day. People are waking up right now where I'm from. People are up where you're at, but they're going to school tomorrow. Sunday, Friday.
Well, Sunday, can you hear that? School. I did hear it.
Just a heads up, we're about 17, 18
we'll listen for a second.
Got 3.7 of 2.964, and I show that the tank is not empty and the light is green. So I'm going to go ahead and take the compressor to off.
Very important.
So they're
technical.
Okay, we copy in the star block. We concur. That's the right way to go.
Coffee?
I thought they couldn't be distracted.
Yeah, I know. If it was blue screen, no, it's not blue screen. It's black screen. Oh. My wife just said, "Is it blue screen?" And they're talking.
An inch to an inch away from the empty mark.
We copy that. And what Yeti Bay were you using to empty it into?
I know that voice. That's
01.
Cobra.
Yeah, that's the Elvis guy, right?
Okay, we concur.
Nominal.
God, I hate that word.
Oh my God.
All right, well, we're going to float down here and look at some more video since that one's not showing anything exciting. But I mean, you can go to any of these and
Have you ever actually heard them chatter and talk like that on the live stream?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, they do on occasion. Usually a bunch of nonsense. It is fun. Like, what is it? Once a day or so they do.
And Tim, when you complete that start block, basically turning off the compressor, if you would please stand by for a moment. Let us talk about this.
Copy.
Yeah.
It's funny when they talk to the Russians because they've got some lady that does the translations.
It's in the Philippines.
It's hilarious.
And I'm sure they've got someone doing sign language for the deaf astronauts as well.
Well, I'm sure. Here's looks like the sun here, so we'll go watch this one for a second.
And real quick, back to your point, just something that I wanted to mention, and I know I use the Santa Claus analogy almost to a fault, but, it's like the 10-year-old kid going to recess with all the 5-year-olds, there's 100 of them, right? And he tells them all, hey, Santa isn't real. Even though he's telling the truth, he's going to get his ass kicked by a bunch of 5-year-olds because they're going to defend their belief in Santa Claus vehemently. And you're totally right. This propaganda campaign, this psyop, this globe Earth belief system has gotten so pervasive into our culture that the way that I've put it is most people actually guard the cell to their own self-imprisonment. You know, they throw away the key and guard the cell to their own self-imprisonment, which is this, you know, sort of very bizarre belief system involving the world being a spinning sphere. But just wanted to mention that because it is such a great analogy. I mean, right?
It is good.
The 10-year-old telling 55-year-olds that Santa isn't real. Yeah, that's your flat earther for you. He's gonna come out a little bit bruised. He might get away because he's faster, but maybe not.
It's just so obvious to me now that you know. Everything you look at just screams deception. I mean, this right here, look how high the sun is up off the earth. And if this is only 250 miles high from our vantage point, how is that light not hitting? How much more of the globe should it hit? I mean, it's ridiculous that would be all that's lit, because it doesn't go up and away from you. You know what I'm saying? Like, that may be our view from here, but if you're standing on Earth, let's say right in the middle of where we can see the Earth from here, straight down the middle of the screen, does my mouth actually work? I'll do this. So if you're looking like right here, there's no reason this position would not be in the light. Can you see my mouse or no?
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally understand what you're saying, because if the sun was as distant as they say, even if you were to drop 250 miles, there wouldn't be much change in that azimuth or the parallax.
Not at all.
But since the sun is closer, I would probably theorize that if you took that point of view all the way down to the ground, the sun would be set, because you can obviously tell that directly beneath that craft is in darkness. If that's actually real footage with a sort of fisheye effect, and then maybe even an overlay of a 3D model on top of all of those layers, that's what it sort of looks like.
And there's so many things people need to just think about, because exactly what you just said. And yeah, there's a big difference between 93 million miles and who knows if it's, 2,000 to 4,000 miles, or who knows how far it is. I'm certainly not one claiming to know that. But when you look at it, and I always go back to that ocean view when you're standing at the beach, and I'm sure everyone's stood at the beach before at some point or another. And if you looked out at the water and looked out at the horizon, the water definitely is rising to your eye level. It's kind of flowing off in the distance, but if it was going down like a ball, it would go at your feet level and fall away from you so clearly, but it doesn't do that. And that should bring up a huge red flag to people as to why is the water coming up to my eye level? Why does it appear when I look out that those things are higher than my feet? And it would never look that way if it wasn't for the sun being a lot closer. I'm just watching this little feed here.
Well, you want to know what's funny, though, and this is something that it didn't occur to me. It was pointed out to me by a friend of mine, Brian. He's a civil engineer. He's done a bunch of shows with me on Static Plane Truth. If you guys haven't seen it, I've done 12 now. But this is so funny, and I don't know if you had caught this before, but it makes perfect sense. Now, you mentioned the distance to the sun being, people say 2,000 to 4,000 miles. I think Zetetic Astronomy, the phrase that Robotham used was slightly less than 4,000 miles. But here's the kicker, or the sort of coincidence, if you will. Isn't it sort of funny that the supposed radius of the Earth from, the core of the spherical Earth to the sea level is what? Just slightly under 4,000 miles. And in fact, if the distance it appears as what they did is they took the actual or apparent distance to the sun and just called that the axis of curvature, the radius of curvature for the Earth. And that's how you get a lot of the numbers jiving, because what they've done is essentially just inverted it. Instead of a 4,000 mile radius of curvature, you've got a roughly slightly less than 4,000 mile distance to the sun. So I thought that was interesting. And it's not just sort of a theory or observation. There's actually, data that's a little bit beyond my capacity to explain in a few sentences that backs it up. But anyone that hasn't looked at the Facebook page, $5,000 NASA Eclipse Challenge, there's a crap ton of data in there involving a bunch of eclipses that are just technically impossible on a spherical Earth model. So it's definitely interesting, and I think it's, I don't, had you ever thought about that, the distance, you know,
No.
sort of the agreed upon distance, or one of the agreed upon distances in the flat Earth model to the sun is about 4,000 miles, and what a coincidence that the radius of the spherical Earth is basically the exact same number. I think it's like 3,980 whatever, you know, it's basically
Right.
4,000 miles, right?
Yeah, it's like 3987 or something.
Right, something like that.
Yeah. Now, I mean, my biggest thing, I always go back to this too, is when you look at this contraption that they've created, why would you put anything that needs to be hooked up, fixed, you know, rewired? Why would anything be on the outside of the space station? It makes absolutely no sense. If you picture an airplane and you say, okay, we're going to add all these modules to it, and we're going to, everything that you did would be from the inside. So that if something needed to be fixed, you would walk over on the inside of the plane and fix it, especially if it had to be up nonstop. Basically, the entire idea of them having all these little plugs and cables and connectors and having to keep sending these guys out into space to fix things is a joke. I mean, it's just not how you would operate in reality. And of course, that's the way that they, you know, they like to get their little spacewalk footage out there. They like you to see that because it really, you know, drills home that this is real. This is real. Why else would we fake all that? And I understand that. It's just they're faking it for that exact reason, because it's very hard for people to ever say, wait, all that footage that they show us is fake. And you're, well, yeah. I mean, there's no other way to look at it. It simply is deception. I was going to see if I could find, have you ever seen the view, John, where it's kind of, you're like in the lower corner of the globe, so almost like it, I don't know, 7 o'clock, kind of looking.
Well, and hold on, before you do that, I just want to give a quick plug real quick to a guy named Steve Blakey. He's a YouTuber, and some of his stuff was just hilarious, inspiring, and so true to me. And I actually used a clip of his in one of my very first videos, and I could never find his original channel again until recently, and I noticed that the guy is still doing good, you know, really, really good, funny, sort of humorous and truthful flat earth work, but he doesn't have a whole lot of subs, which I was very surprised, because I sort of expected him to have a ton. But one of the first, or among the first videos that he made was sort of going over the exact same point that you did. And he, you know, he had just such a funny way of putting it that, you know, you'd think that they would configure the International Space Station to have, you know, the critical sort of life support systems, the necessities configured so that they could be accessed and fixed from the inside of the International Space Station. But instead, you know, it's almost as if they purposefully put these, you know, critical life supporting systems on these far reaches of the outside of the International Space Station. And it really seems it's just a reason to support this spectacle of, you know, so-called spacewalks, which appear to be done in underwater tanks, because, you know, Steve Blakey was one of the first, as far as I know, to point out that little scuba diver in space and some of the air bubbles coming out of their tanks, and of course the infamous snorkels in space. But yeah, Steve Blakey, definitely check him out if you haven't seen his work. He's pretty funny. He's got some good stuff. But if you guys could excuse me just for 1 second, I'm on my 3rd cup of coffee and I've got to go see a man about a dog.
No problem.
I'll be right back.
We'll be looking at Christmas lights while you're gone. So
awesome.
this is something I saw the other day. This is classic. I mean, what is this? This is what our money's getting. So this is your live views of Earth for everyone who wants to drop this link and say this is 24/7 footage. This is nonsense. I was hoping to find that view where I can show you pretty easily and prove that it's a lie, but I'm not seeing it anywhere. This is nice too. This is if you want to see like, what the hell is this? What is that? That is on your 24/7 footage of the Earth from space. Some video game, I guess.
This is a weird video. Fast forward, it goes to a weird view.
Whoa, what is that? This is like Space Invaders.
CERN.
Jeez. Now, you can't call these stars because somebody will just say they're broken pixels. So,
Got latch 3.
oh, shut up. By the way, we still are looking at a black screen on the live feed. So if anybody thinks I'm not going back there, that's not the case. Yeah, this view is classic. That's really an important camera to have, one that's blocked by everything. Okay, that's lovely. This is nice. So it's all just deception, guys, and I watch it on your own. Spend a couple hours today, just watch this, and you will know that something's up. And from there, oh, there it is. Beautiful. Okay, so hopefully nothing goes live here, and I'll show you. Hopefully you guys can see my mouse here.
I can see it.
Okay.
And what is the plural of mouse? Is it meese, mices, mouses?
Mice.
Mice. Okay.
Okay, so
No,
watch.
all right.
Well, oops, let me see. Why is it all blurred there? Okay. Anyway, so see where my mouse is here, and let's follow this little cloud here, and we'll see that this cloud is dropping down. See how it's coming down? Started up here at the top of the screen. Now it's coming down. So,
contact testing 1 2 3.
oh, shut up.
Test 1 2.
Shut up. So you see how it's coming down. We definitely see this little knob here. Hopefully everyone can see it at home. If not, go pull this up on ISS Live, and you'll see how it drops. So it started here. It's going way down here. Now, if we watch some piece of cloud from here, so I'm going to take this little knob end here, and we'll keep watching
Knob
this.
end.
If you keep watching this here, this knob end will just roll along the bottom of the screen here, which is absolutely impossible. How can this cloud be dropping straight down? It's coming down, and yet this knob will continue along this little path. It's complete and total horseshit.
1 2 3.
And so this is probably,
Test 1 2.
shut up. It's probably one of the easiest proofs I've seen that absolutely proves it. I mean, how could the globe be turning this way? And again, we'll watch something up here. We'll see something easy to tell. Let's look at this big space here. So this big empty cloud spot, watch that, and it's dropping. It's definitely looks like a duck. It's dropping down. It started up here. Here it comes down. We'll keep watching this one. We're still black on the live feed. And we'll
Can you maximize that all, or is that me?
Yeah. Oh, probably should do that. Oh, not theater mode. Don't do that. Okay. Now you can see it better?
Haha, yeah.
Okay, so we'll wait for another something to pop into view here that's easy to see.
Yeah, but I definitely see what you're saying, and I agree that we're not seeing the sort of parallax that we should for objects, because I guess a frame of reference would be like the clouds sort of in the top right corner would be what, how many thousands of miles closer than the clouds at the periphery or at the edge, right?
Yeah, I took a globe and tried to get in this position and tried to basically turn it in a way that led me to, put me in this spot. And no matter what you do, if this is coming down, then this has to go down. It may not go down at the same rate because it is, you're looking at this and you're closer here than you are. This is far away, but it still has to go down. It cannot, a piece that we see here in a second. Okay, so see this little, looks like a little doodle here. It's kind of a bright clouds, this little doodle. If you watch that, started up here, and it's definitely dropping. Okay, so this is, we can actually draw the path and see it's going to come down here. It's going to end about here. And now over there in the bottom left, so keep your eye over here because since it's all blue, we'll wait till the first cloud appears. So again, we're watching this.
And I see exactly what they're doing. I totally understand it now. Now, if this is partially real high altitude footage, what you'd have to do, and I could do this in a video editing software pretty easily. Okay, but assume that the top right corner is the bottom. So you'd have to rotate the entire image, say, 90 degrees, farther than 90 degrees clockwise, so
Right.
that you've got the horizon horizontal, obviously, and then you'd have to just sort of unwarp it, and I believe what you'd see is exactly what we see with high altitude flight, which is the clouds below sort of slowly rolling past. And yeah, I totally agree that this is not what we should see on a spherical Earth. I mean,
Let me find another one of those same ones here. We're still black on the live screen. It's
I'm glad I didn't bet.
You would have lost. Let's see here. Let's try this one. Yeah, this view is the easiest for me to see, but you're right. All it is it's done with a fisheye lens, and it's that easy. Let's see here. Let's maximize this. Okay, so if we watch something, whatever pops up next here that's kind of discernible, we will watch that. Okay. Yeah, and when I watched this, I just kept drawing it out and kept trying to play with a globe, and it's impossible on a ball. Again, like you said, though, it is just a high altitude plane that's flying over here, and this has been bent. So what you're seeing on the left is just the same thing that's going by if you're a plane on the left. And that's why these things, this looks like it's going down to our perspective here, and this is staying the same. But if you think about it, just unwrapping it, it's going to be both doing the same thing. This is coming this way. Okay, so watch this little piece here. So it started here, and it's clearly coming down the ball. So it's going to end up right about here. Oops, give my mouse back. So we can watch that piece. It's going to come down here. Now let's watch something in the lower left. So we'll keep watching this just so you can see. And we'll watch to see this big cloud now is coming along. So watch that big cloud, and we can watch this. It's going to end up here. Now this big cloud has to be going down as well. It has to wrap underneath a ball. It cannot come along this edge. It makes no sense. It's just not the way it worked. Then basically these clouds are going to end up crashing into these clouds if we were to kind of draw this out and continue it. But this cloud will just continue. It will keep coming, and it will. It's really ridiculous. In fact, if you
Right. And one thing I would point out too is this is real-time footage. It's not like it's time-lapse. And I know that some people would argue, well, you know, clouds move, but no, they don't, you know, over a matter of seconds. Those are the clouds are essentially stationary from this time frame of reference. You know, this is real time.
Yeah, and I've actually watched this before, and believe it or not, these things affect the clouds, which sounds crazy. I don't even know how that would be or why that is, but they will break up clouds. I don't know how else to explain it. You'd have to watch it for yourself and just, you know, get an idea of what this little knob here. It's usually easier when you can see something like maybe this M. I don't know if you can see that, but it kind of looks like the letter M. And if you watch this hit this satellite dish and watch it come out the other side, and again, it could be changing underneath it, who knows? But most of the time when I watch that, it will warp this. And you kind of see it's kind of like bending it, and then watch it come out on the other side. And you'll see this is that big cloud we were watching, still rolling on the bottom. How is it not falling down like these clouds are? It just doesn't work the way a globe would. It just is ridiculous.
Yeah, to me, it's just total trick photography again. And what I'm doing actually right now, and I'll probably stop it, but I've been recording my screen for the last couple of minutes. And what I'll do is I'll take this image or this animation or whatever into Vegas Pro, do just a little bit of manipulation. I mean, you can call it dishonest, but what they're doing is dishonest. But I think that there may be some element of truth to this. Now, I don't necessarily think that what we're seeing here as the ISS is an actual physical thing. I think that is a CGI model. And the reason that I think that, and you've seen it several times too, Jaron, where like, let's just say we're in darkness and then the sun.
Yeah, I wasn't paying attention. Is this supposed to be it?
Be torn to pieces.
Is this supposed to be what?
What was that noise?
That was my wife. Sorry.
Oh, I thought it was like somebody just said something about it being torn to pieces.
Yeah. Well, she was just commenting that, you know, the law of averages dictates that the ISS should have been hit by at least one piece of space junk, even if it was the size of a pebble over 15 years. No, but what?
It'd be going 23,000 miles per hour, it would rip right through it.
Oh, and what if it was going the opposite direction? You could have a difference in velocity of up to like 35, 50,000 miles an hour. Even a pebble at that velocity would be just ridiculous amount of energy. But no, what I was saying is the ISS appears to be a CG model, and the reason I think that, and you've seen it too, is like you'll see, and maybe if you could pull up an animation, or a similar to what we were just watching, but you'll see the sunrise way off in the distance behind the ISS. So it's, you know, 93 million miles between past the ISS, according to your point of view, and yet when it rises, the side of the ISS that's facing you, the side of the ISS that should be in complete shadow, lights up brilliantly.
Oh yeah.
which proves conclusively to me that it's a CGI model, and that they're just, you know, people typically don't tend to think in terms of, because we've all taken basic art classes, the source of light is going to be, you know, on the side of an object that's white, and the opposite side of that object should be in darkness. And yet in space, the LIMobile, the ISS, for some reason it defies the laws of, you know,
look at this. This is totally a light turning on. Oh, that's weird. Why do I see it on this view turning on? This one I'm not. Hold on 1 second. Oh, in a second, look at the light turn
There
on.
you go. Yep. And see the light come
Come
on.
on.
The sun is 90, according to them, 93 million miles in the other direction. And so how in the crap is
Look at
that
this
side
view,
of
just
the
keep getting
ISS
brighter.
being lit up? I mean, it's just
I've seen this a million
ridiculous.
times. Watch it keep getting brighter. And
Yeah.
it keeps getting brighter and brighter and brighter. It's like, where's the light coming from? How is it getting bright? And if
Yeah.
people want to say it's lighting, there's lighting on the ISS, well, then they're controlling the lighting based on the sunrise. That's deception. Why are they doing that? Why would you have somebody whose job is to turn on the light on the ISS when the sun is rising?
Oh, they can't afford cameras up there, but they can
Yeah.
afford thousands of really heavy and expensive floodlights, right? That are immune to the vacuum of space and to the conditions in the thermosphere, right? Because we all know how floodlights are immune to the conditions of outer space in the thermosphere.
I mean, this is a joke. Where is that light coming from?
Yeah, it's totally, it could be totally CGI and that light is just a light emitter in a AutoCAD program, or it could be a scale model with a bunch of floodlights hitting it. But obviously, whatever light is hitting this side of the ISS, it could not possibly be coming from the sun. And we've seen that I don't know how many times, and that's just very, very sloppy work by NASA. I mean, sloppy. It doesn't get much more sloppy than that. Any art director, anybody that's been on a, sort of in the filmmaking process would step in and say, wait a minute, what the hell are you guys doing? The source of light is on the other side. That this part should be in shadow. I mean, it really is just basic common sense. And it leaves you to wonder, it's like, who do these people have in charge of their art department? I mean, they really must have a lot of really crappy. I mean, obviously they have the technology, they've got the know-how, but in terms of continuity, I guess that's what you'd call it in a movie making sort of vernacular, continuity, they're all jacked up.
You know
I'm
what I think?
sorry.
I hate to say this, but I honestly think it's done. They waited till they had everyone indoctrinated, right? To the point where now they just do it as a joke. I really do think it's more meant to make to kind of put it in our face, because so many people believe this. It doesn't matter what we show. It doesn't matter how many times I show this view right here. Look at that. I mean, that is not real. And you don't live on the ball there. You don't live there. And no matter how many times I'll tell people that, they'll fight against it and say, this is absolutely the truth. And I already know what's going to happen here. It's the sun will rise above that big square there, that cylinder, if you will. So there it is. I mean,
Yep.
you can tell what they're doing, and it's like they don't want to show the sunrise, so they're going to show it behind that. Whoa. Okay. I mean, it's just not the sun. I mean, to me, this is when it's just bullshit. It just doesn't make any sense. Again, if it's that high up, and if you're talking 93 million miles away, then it's going to, cover half that globe right there with light. It's not going to just cover that one point you can see. This is only 250 miles high, which is nothing in comparison to 93 million miles. It's a joke. It just makes no sense to me.
And you know what's even worse than the argument? Because some people will argue, oh, they're not faking anything. But I think what's even worse is, and I've heard this, pretty recently, because I did a response to Martimer81. It was kind of brutal. But he said, even if they're faking all these pictures, it doesn't matter. That's part of
Red's
it.
rhetoric too. Red's rhetoric says he'll give me that everything NASA's ever done is fake. He can still prove that the Earth is flat. I mean, the Earth is a ball, and it's not flat. I'm like, dude, whatever you want to say. Why would you even take another breath after saying that everything NASA done is fake without going and researching why?
Do you see that little sphere off to the left of the sun, maybe around 9, 10, I don't know.
Yeah, I see it.
6, 7, 8, 7:30 or so.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't that look very similar to one of those little orbs that was in the airplane eclipse video, or am I just tripping here?
No, I always see those. I haven't determined what they are yet. But I mean, down here you can see this little flare here also. Oops, I should blow this up. My bad. I mean, this here just is clearly a light to me. It's just, I don't know how anybody can see it as anything else. Okay, things tripping out.
Oh, that must be a hole in the ozone layer. That little.
It's just ridiculous. And I mean, right here is where you can supposedly see it from Earth, right? When it's kind of pre-dawn. Supposedly this is supposed to be lit up enough that that's what we see when you go look outside. And the people who think that that's proof, it's like, yeah, I could see where you're saying that if, look at the shadow starting to drop on that thing already. If they showed live footage from the ISS and we could see it from the ground, you could match those two things up and prove that it was real. But we don't get live footage, so it doesn't matter to me that you go outside. I've seen it a million times. I can go outside and watch the light that goes flying above my head, but that doesn't mean, it's not proof that the ISS is what that is emitting that light. I would need to match that with the footage I see.
Look at the cloud cover too. I don't care how bright that thing is. You're not going to be able to see it through miles and miles and miles of cloud like that. I mean, that's just ridiculous to even think that you'd be able to see it through, the entire troposphere.
Bob and I were looking at this one night, and it just so happens that the thing flies about the speed of a plane. When you look up in the sky and you're watching it, the light that goes across the sky is about the same speed as you would see a plane. And it just so happens that if you multiply that speed by about 50, that equals the 17,500. And just so perfectly that it's about, a plane is about 50 times closer than the ISS. So like everything they do is so easily seen. It's an easy deception. It's not difficult.
Well, the only thing is, though, is I think that they would have to have multiple, quote unquote, mock ISSs.
Well, they do.
Yeah, they'd have to use a bunch for each sort of time zone. But yeah, I could see that being much easier to pull off and a whole hell of a lot cheaper than actually having that, hunk of junk up there.
Well, it's still hard for me to explain to people, and I guess it would take a lot more time of proving it. But what we see in our sky is not as vast as we think. We see the stars, so we think that it's this huge sky, but it's not that vast. And we know that by just watching a plane going from one horizon to the other will take about 10 minutes. So that's not, how far does a plane go in 10 minutes? Maybe, let's see, 10 minutes would be 1/6. So maybe 100 miles.
Right. Well, and then of course the stars are going to be further removed, just call it the astral plane. And so that apparent distance from horizon to horizon could be several thousand miles, but we see it as the most distant stars as being very near to the horizon or near to the ground, when in fact, obviously they're on the same plane as the rest of the stars. But again, it's it's really just the operations of perspective. But
right, but
no, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, a plane's only going, 100 miles in between one horizon to the other, or let's give it 200 miles, regardless. So if it's 200 miles from your horizon to horizon, then we see the ISS do the same thing. So in order for them to tell people when it's flying above them, they have a ton of them. They have a bunch of them that are going. From my perspective, I can see it go by, but it's only going 200 miles, whereas their idea of, or what they're saying it is actually traveling basically 50 times that. You could just do the same thing.
And without any frame of reference, it's impossible to tell. It really is, especially like in a night sky, which is the only time you're ever going to see the ISS. You don't have any sort of frame of reference. You have the background stars, but that doesn't do any good.
Well, it actually does, and this is something I've told people to do before, because my wife and I did it, and it proved a lot to me. Everything that we've ever done is just more icing on the cake. But when we were doing at this time we were trying 15 miles, trying to see the light from one side of the beach to the other. And after we were done, we just were sitting there on the beach. I was laying down on the beach. She was on the other side. We were talking on the cell phone, and we were just watching the sky, and we would see planes fly by, and she would say, okay, do you see that plane blinking red? Where do you see it? And I would tell her where I would see it in my sky, and they were completely different. They weren't even close, which, makes sense from our different perspectives.
Right.
Maybe I see mine crossing the Little Dipper, and she would see hers, completely different part of the sky. Well, all of a sudden she said, oh, I see the ISS. And I said, oh, where? And she pointed out to me, and then she said, it's about to cross. And I said, the second star of the Big Dipper. And she said, yeah, now. And right when she said it, it passed the second star of the Big Dipper to my view. And I said, babe, did it go over the second star? Went right over it? And she said, absolutely, went right over it, right on top of it. And I said, I saw the same exact thing. So to me, that told me that it's a completely different, it's like a light that's attached, basically, I want to say as high as the stars are. I mean, it's not.
Well, you know, and the thing is, though, here's another thing. It could be way higher up than a plane, way bigger than a plane, but not 250 miles up.
No.
And what I'm thinking, and actually Bob had suggested this a while back, that they may be, you know, sort of retrofitting something like a U-2 spy plane to appear as the ISS. And, you know, that makes a lot of sense to me because let's face it, I mean, the military and all the world militaries, they've got, I don't know how many tens of thousands of planes and drones at their disposal. You know, even with unmanned drones, such a thing would be very easy to just program, set it and forget it. I mean, really, it's just a fire and forget thing that they could ultimately, you know, automate.
They would easily have planes that could stay up there indefinitely, right?
Or
Power
not
and-
even necessarily. I mean, they could land. Well, yeah, I guess they could if it's drones that are running on some form of either solar power or alternative free energy. That, you know, I mean, we as flat earthers, we have to. I don't know about you, but I've come to the conclusion that the Earth itself is essentially a never-ending free energy device that we just have to sort of know how to tap into. So, but even in the case where they're landing these things, they would just have to land them during the day and make sure that they are in the sky where they're supposed to appear to be. But let's just say instead of 250 miles up the size of a football field, say it's 75 miles up the size of, you know, a quarter of a football field. Then you may not have that much parallax from, you know, like your two observations,
Mhm.
as you would with a plane that's much closer. So I don't know. I mean, you know, and then maybe you're right. Maybe they are projecting some type of an image onto, say, the lower magnetosphere, which is about 250 to 300 miles up. So, you know, HARP and the blue beam and that sort of technology is there, but we as civilians don't fully understand it, and they won't tell us about it for probably 50 years. So.
Yeah, I think it's to me, it's just definitely some sort of drone, some sort of. When I say high altitude plane, I don't mean 100,000 feet. You know, I would venture to guess it's 50 miles. However high they can get it, you know, I would guess is where it's at, and it's just running off solar power. It charges when it's day, and then it uses that charge at night. They don't ever have to take it down, and it's on a schedule. And that's why you're able to, just by changing the date on your computer, change the location of where the ISS is. You've done that before?
Well, I've seen you do it, and yeah, and it's just an algorithm. They've got it figured out where it's supposed to be, when it's supposed to be for the next, you know, probably to infinity. And if you go out there with your telescope, it's going to more or less appear where it's supposed to appear. But that's unless, you know, maybe there's a malfunction in one of the sectors. And I think that you'd mentioned that even on a clear night, it didn't appear when it was supposed to appear, and then it appeared a few minutes late. So I could see even slight discrepancies, which blue screen.
Womp 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 womp. Boo.
But you know
Where's
what
my
I mean.
$1,000? Where's my $1,000?
$1,000. I think we had a bunch of betters, so y'all can make checks payable to theearthisflat.com. No, I'm kidding.
You just do auto deposit. Just go to some bank and tell them, put it in Jaren's account. They'll know who you're talking about.
Yeah, they know.
All right, let's watch something else here. That's funny. So yeah, again, we had the blue screen there. What time did I say? I had about 6:25, but remember we had a good 20 minutes of black after that, but 6:25 to 7:15 or 7:10. So we didn't even get 40 minutes. And how much time did we get of actual footage? Was probably 10 minutes.
Oh, and it was beautiful footage, I'll tell you. That globe sure is spherical.
It's so real. How could you even question it? And that's the crazy thing. I mean, the thing that baffles me is the absolute vitriol in the comments that we get. Absolute just hate, and just like we are the biggest idiots ever known to man. We shouldn't breed. We should go back to a cave. Like we never went to any, we never were educated like supposedly these people are. It's just, they just don't get it. It's like, dude, I went to school. I learned all the things that you learned. I understand that. Hey, I know it sucks that all these things are lying, and I wouldn't be saying it if it wasn't true. It takes a lot to come out and make videos saying the earth is flat. It's not just easier. The people saying I'm doing it for money. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. I definitely chose to.
And popularity.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to be popular. I wanted people to follow me. Like, what a joke. And it's the last thing that somebody would want, especially what we take for it. I mean, it's ridiculous. And it's, you have to keep doing it at this point because I know it's true. If I had any doubts, I would back away. If I had any doubts at all that maybe what I'm saying isn't true, do I feel comfortable saying these things out loud? I would back away. Now, am I 100% positive of the shape of the Earth? Do I know exactly what the map is? No, of course not, because it's been hidden from us, and people don't understand that either. They don't understand the idea of deception. They don't get it. It's like, show me proof that satellites don't exist. It's like, I can give you everything I can, but it's up to you. You got to use your head. You got to think, have I ever seen a satellite in my entire life? Can they do things like they tell us they do with satellites with other means? And, you know, somebody who told me about that Himawari thing, that one we were talking about earlier, that one view, that, you know, the geostationary view or whatever, somebody said, you know, why would they fake this? How would they fake it? I said, why? Because a high altitude plane that took pictures of a cloud cover would cost them what? Versus, do you know how much that Himawari cost? It was
Houston on too for Oleg Space Ground
Is that
4 is
blue?
private, ready
Oh.
for your PFC.
270 million was the cost of that satellite, plus 100 million to launch it. So 370 million, and they could have easily done it with a high altitude plane. Now you can see that little you can see actually the glint on the Earth there. See it? Oh, now it just disappeared.
Yeah, a little hot spot, definitely. And jumping back to what you were saying just a moment ago, actually the sort of theme of my show yesterday was misconceptions and ignorance. And these misconceptions and ignorance are a one-way street, and that street leads directly to the globe Earth. And it's just funny because people use their misconceptions, preconceived notions, and really ignorance to try to debunk this. You know, they think it's a bizarre theory, which is actually happens to be the truth. But it really is difficult because people, and we see this time and time again, they'll pull a Tyson. And no, I don't mean bite Evander Holyfield's ear off. I mean, they'll pull a Tyson, as in drop their microphone to prove gravity, when in fact we all know this is just a demonstration of what goes up must come down. But it's this sort of ignorance of the model and pointing to things like, you know, like we're looking at here, which you're right. I mean, it's just very deceptive. There's a lot of inconsistencies with it. They go back in later and sort of change the images and
I
fluff
think I
them
know
up.
what you're saying too. So you're saying that this view that we're getting here is real, but it's bent, for a lack of a better way to say it.
Yeah,
Because
and then even a
I think
3D model placed on top of that layer, because you can unwarp that horizon, but I don't think that ISS is even there. I think that's a CG
correct. This is just a
composite
layer.
image overlaid. And again, the reason I believe that is because of the lighting. I don't think that was done with floodlights. I think it was done with virtual lights in a 3D rendering software.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that the clouds that we see may be real. The only thing that's not is everything that we see that looks like a layer put right on top of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's really, I mean, there are ways that you can sort of tell, but with the level of technology and the money that they have and the time that they have to spend on this, and really, I mean, they have the ability to hire the best and the brightest, designers. And according to Matt Powerland, they can't even confirm whether or not their own work is used in something like, say, this ISS model, if that is what it is. There may be elements of it that are one artist's work, elements of it that are another artist's work, and nobody really has any way to confirm for sure that, hey, wait a minute, that looks exactly like my model of whatever that large capsule thing is on top. That may be sort of an amalgamation or a combination of multiple models, if you will.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This thing's ridiculously looking.
But the Earth itself looks real, just not, there's no curvature like that. I mean, we know there's no curvature, so that can be achieved very easily with a fisheye lens. And in fact, we're not, like you mentioned before, we're not seeing the perspective that we should. The stuff that's basically directly in the middle should be coming at you much more swiftly than the stuff towards the edges, because we're talking about thousands and thousands of miles You know, much like the mountains in the distance appear to sort of stay put relative to the trees nearby you when you're racing down the highway. This thing's supposedly going 17,000 miles an hour or whatever. You should definitely notice a difference between the clouds directly beneath in terms of relative speed compared to the clouds way off to the sides, and you just don't see it. So, yep, totally fake fisheye lens with a CGI model overlaid, I believe.
And another thing would be, let's picture that you're a kitchen table that's flat, flat dinner table. If it was it's a round kitchen table, then imagine that we're sitting here looking at this perspective of the table. Just because the table is curved at the end does not mean that the table isn't flat. Certainly doesn't mean that the table is a ball. It just means that the table is round. So, I mean,
Right.
even that alone just tells people, I mean, why they consider this. Well, there's a curve there, so it's obviously a sphere. It's like, what if we see a curve like we do right in this picture here? You just picture this is a kitchen table that is flat, that is going around in a circle like a kitchen table would, and it's completely flat. And we just get this view because you could do that with a fisheye lens. It's kind of also with the whole idea of spherical aberration, right? Which is, if you look out anywhere, if you look out your window right now, the right and left side of your view will be pulled closer to you there rather than what you're looking at straight ahead, which could be the effect that we're seeing here. It's pulling it in to your right and left because that's just how your eyes work.
And well, and you know, in terms of the round table example, I don't think there's anything round about it. I think that the horizon that we're looking at is actually flat, and the reason why this craft that's supposedly going so fast never appears to ever get any closer to the edge of the table. I mean, because you'll notice no matter how far it goes, that edge of the table never gets any closer. It's the vanishing point. It's the horizon. I mean, it's a combination of things, mainly atmospheric refraction, and then of course the operations of perspective. But if you were to just sort of imagine, and again, you can do it in video editing or still editing software, flatten out that horizon and look at these islands. I mean, you can literally see the different colors in water. That's impossible from 250 miles away. I'm sorry. This is high altitude flight. With a fisheye lens and then an overlaid some type of a CGI or model image, because you can clearly tell that whatever this ISS is not being affected by the fisheye lens, and that's just a very simple technique of video editing, which is called using different layers. So the fisheye effect is not applied to that layer, period. I mean, it's very simple.
I kept seeing some here. I would rewind it if I knew how, but this thing right here, I keep seeing like a reflection of the sun that'll appear here, and then it moves at the same speed as the Earth. I'm going to see if I see it again. I saw it twice where the sun was kind of out here. You see this reflection, then it moved the same speed as the Earth, and then it appeared again and went out there. See if I see it again here.
Yeah, I'll look for it. I don't know. Can you back it up? Or is this live, or is this from the archive?
No, this is the live view.
Oh, okay.
It went back.
Okay. Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed throughout NASA history, especially when CGI was starting to be used for the sphere Earth and other spherical planets. One of the main sort of components of any AutoCAD is that if you draw a sphere and apply a texture and a light source to it, it always adds a little hot spot to, you know, whatever edge of the sphere is relevant to the light source. And you'll find this in basically all of NASA's spinning globe images and animations. It's like they couldn't even have the foresight to take out that hot spot, which is sort of automatically inserted by AutoCAD software. It's very funny. Yeah.
I was trying to see if this thing's breaking up any images here. I'm not really noticing anything. Yeah, the whole thing just is a joke because, again, if it were real, you would easily just have 24/7 video footage. And that's another thing that I've told people is you don't put this thing up there for 16 years, have it going around the Earth, and not have 24/7 video footage. You just don't. It's just not something that you would do. The only reason that they can't is because they can't show it. They can't show a 24-hour view, or else you would easily be able to pick it apart. So they show you just enough that you can only do what we're doing to pick it apart. You can only kind of make assumptions, which a lot of people will just, oh, you're talking crazy. They would have to fake all this. Why would they fake all this? Why would they strap 1 million pounds and shoot it up? Oh, it's like, I wish I could tell you. Unfortunately, I'm not in the business of deceiving people. So I don't know why you would deceive anyone anyway.
Well, no, I mean, but the motive is pretty clear. Well, there's the sort of immediate motive, which is for theoretical physicists and NASA to keep raking in the bucks. They get great notoriety, astronauts, and even Chucky Bolton, whatever his name is. All these guys, it's not like they're making peanuts. They're not volunteers. And there's
and you tell me if this is a possibility, because some I've thought about. What are the chances if, let's say, go back 1600, we have Galileo, these guys, they start saying, hey, there's letter J, my name right there. Let's say that they get the idea that the earth is a ball and they start pushing this idea and they really feel that way. Let's say because back then they may have not had the optics to see things come back when they looked over the edge, over the horizon. Let's say they thought it was a ball. And so they come out with that, and then science starts saying, yeah, it's a ball, it's a ball. And this is their breakaway from the church. They say the church thought it was flat. They're idiots. They thought that the sun went around us. They're idiots. And then come 200 years later, whatever, 1900, 1850, they realized they were wrong. Like, they could have never come out and said that. There's no way they could have come out and said, guys made a mistake. The earth's flat. They could have never done that. So maybe what they did was just said, we got to keep this going. We've got to keep this lie going because it's the only way science will ever progress. It's the only way we can ever show science is the truth. If we admit that we made this big of a mistake, then we're going to get clowned out. We're going to lose all of our positions of notoriety, all of our money, all of our funding. And that's what I think. It's just basically kind of kept going from there. I'm not really sure that the initial intent was to fool people. Maybe it was. I mean, I don't know.
No, I totally agree that I think, first of all, that, people say, oh, people have known this for 500 years. The ancient Greeks knew this, but they were actually sort of more philosophically debating it. It wasn't like they had any absolutes. They were building different models based on sort of a geocentric model and a heliocentric model. And that's, that actually is what science is sort of entertaining different hypotheses, see how it fits with your reality and all that good stuff. But even as late as 100 AD, you had Ptolemy, who used I think there's an astronaut talking.
I will troubleshoot.
Troubleshoot.
Yeah, a lot of troubleshooting to do.
Yep.
No, I totally agree with you. I think people miss the point a little bit about what was going on back then. It was a lot about ideas and conjecture, and even Copernicus said what he was presenting was not at all a description of reality.
Right, but I think that it was diligent of them to look at all these different options, and I don't think that there was as much hostility as we tend to think. And even way up into the 1860s, obviously it was the globe Earth model was being pushed very heavily, and I think that lots of people did believe it. But then you had people like Dr. Robotham wrote Zetetic in the mid to late 1800s, and you had others after him. So it's not like it was a decided thing back in ancient Greece. And I believe this is what I believe, that if there was ever a question, then it was answered in 1955 when Admiral Byrd went to way beyond the South Pole. And if there was ever a question, if they doubted it up to that point, then it was solved. And at that point,
Houston, with you on.
Then began the deception.
They had to make a choice. They had to say either, okay, we can come out and say we were wrong, and technically that would be the honorable thing to do. Let's start from scratch and let's start, trying to really figure this thing out. But instead they decided, well, we've got a pretty good thing going here, and we really don't necessarily want people understanding what's going on.
Attempt to complete the offload.
Nominal.
Specialists, and we'll be attempting to find either a Tubbs or a Yediveh to complete that. In the meanwhile, we recommend you take the WHC to internal Yediveh because we think this is going to take this may take several hours this afternoon to try to get comfortable with refilling that waste tank.
Wow. It speaks.
It speaks.
I've never heard him talk so much as today, unless what do we usually have him muted?
We'll get word on next.
Maybe Bob usually has him muted. I'm not really
I
sure.
think it's safe bet to go ahead and get someone can take a turn on T2, and we'll call and let you know when we have the serial number for either a Tubbs or a Yeti Beta track.
What if they're on the dark side of the earth and your transmission doesn't get through?
You know, I wonder if they're going to pull one of. You remember that old movie with Val Kilmer, where the end of it they put a laser beam that lit off all the popcorn? True Genius, Real Genius, something like that. You remember that old movie?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wonder if they're like punching in the coordinates. They're going to make a bunch of popcorn explode at my house. Right.
You ever seen a Top Secret?
Who's in it? I don't know.
Val Kilmer. It's old.
Probably.
Funny movie.
Yeah, I was a dork that watched all the 80s movies.
Oh, you had to have seen it. I think the cover of the movie has like a cow on it, spotted cow.
Maybe not. Maybe not. I'll
Definitely
have to
look it up. Definitely watch that.
Yeah. Top Secret. Gotcha. But yeah, anyways, in terms of I agree. I think that this was a rationally viable hypothesis in terms of the globe Earth model. I think that it was debated throughout the ages. I think that it was pushed as true because it got a big endorsement from the church. And I think that that wasn't an accident. I think that certain elements within the church saw this as an opportunity to undermine scripture. And, what better way to undermine scripture than in, book 1, page 1, Genesis obviously says the earth is fixed and immovable, not to get into a biblical argument, but hey, isn't that convenient that a spinning globe hurling through space 1,000,000 miles an hour is, that's pretty much the exact opposite is fixed and immovable. And so they had a good thing going for them. People are making money. They've got control over the world. If there is more land out there, even if it is an enclosed system, I'm not going to say one way or another, but there's definitely resources in the Antarctic. And to me, it's just very shocking that Admiral Byrd, if he was telling the truth, and there was all these different resources like coal, possible uranium, oil, if there's all that stuff in the Antarctic, then why didn't we go back? Why aren't there corporations there? Or are they? There's not supposed to be any military activity there, but we do indeed know that there is. And so that itself is a violation of the Antarctic Treaty. But knowing the Rockefeller and the Rothschild types, I'd be willing to bet that they've got a bunch of corporate excursions and drilling operations going on in the far southern region. And we'd be none the wiser.
Block 1 is complete.
No.
The number of pushes is 2929.
I was talking to Missy yesterday. I mean,
2929.
Sorry, I'll let this go. Okay. Do you think, if I were to say, does Obama know the Earth is flat? What would you say?
It's up in the air.
I would say he doesn't. I mean, I think that kind of they're going to hide it even from that level. Now his writers do. His writers know. I know his writer does, but I don't think that even people at that high level, they don't need to know. And I think it's a much bigger thing than that. I think it's, I don't know how they pick who runs NASA and who's at the head of all that kind of crap, because that's questionable. But I can't imagine all those people knowing and just hiding it.
No, just being honest with myself. And I'm not a stupid person, never have been. Never in a million years would I have figured this out had it not been for a nudge towards it, or somebody that, sort of showed that there is this alternative correct hypothesis. But on being very honest with myself, never in a million years, even if, and especially, if you're in a position like the president, or maybe even some celebrities, I guess you could say, you're influenced by advisors, the brightest minds in the world. And I'll tell you, Barack Obama probably, he's definitely a good actor, but he's probably not on the level with people like, let's just say Nikola Tesla. He's probably not exactly a brilliant genius, but he is a good actor, that's for sure. But no, I totally think it's possible that Obama, and I'll even go so far as to say like the internet service providers and the cable service providers, even at those levels, are totally oblivious because, I mean, what better way to keep this secret than to really keep it secret?
Right.
And it's my belief that only certain levels of people are sort of given this information or led towards this information in these secretive Masonic-esque brotherhoods that literally have blood oaths, you know, so if they tell secrets, they're going to be killed. But I think that ultimately, you know, at some levels of these sort of esoteric secret societies, it is a very well guarded secret. But to the masses, including the president, even CEOs of, say, you know, like Time Warner, I don't I think it's very, very possible that even they, you know, are totally snowed on this.
Once you've created GPS, once you've created the coordinate system, then you can have tons of stuff lying outside of those coordinates easily. I mean, it wouldn't be difficult. It wouldn't be like, well, he would have to know. No, when he flies in a plane, just like a pilot who flies the plane, they're going to follow the GPS coordinates, which are going to take them to where they think they are. And it's as easy as that. And I mean, there's so many evidences that I've found. I went looking deep one time trying to find a north-south circumnavigation, and you just can't find one. Go looking and you'll see so many errors all over with every different explanation of it. The guy who owns the record left North Carolina, flew down to Brazil, then from Brazil flew to Antarctica, then from Antarctica was supposed to go 90 degrees south and then across and hit Australia. Well, he went to the 90 degrees south marker and turned around and flew back to Brazil and said that there was bad weather at the 90 degrees, and then went to Australia from Brazil, then up to Alaska, then up to the North Pole and back to North Carolina, and they gave him the record. And it's like, how is that navigation north to south? It's ridiculous. It's like,
yeah,
there's so many little things like that that I wonder, you know, how does nobody say anything about that? You know, does Guinness know? Why would Guinness give that record? If so, I mean, to me, it just seems like it's all about what what you've presented is the truth, and everybody thinks that the GPS coordinates that we have are the truth. So from there, it's kind of an easy deception to continue. It's just people. The only thing, obviously, the ones who know is NASA at the highest levels.
Yes, Alec. There is very limited troubleshooting we can do here from Houston, but we do believe your family was disconnected from the codec. So we are attempting to get them to redial into Houston. So if you happen to be on the IP phone with your family, please tell them to call the codec.
And if you happen to be faking space, please tell that guy to shut his pie hole.
If you happen to be brainwashed to a certain level.
The words for the party would be to call the codec. That's the standard call that they do to set up a PFC. Your party initiates that phone call. They would know what to do.
Oh, we're getting KFC. I take mine extra crispy.
Thank you, Alec.
Okay, so we are looking at we're at 20 minutes without a blue screen.
Yeah, well, no, they just said earlier. I think that they're on to us because they said they have about a 2-hour project that they're going to do. So this may be a first in history where we get 2 straight hours of ISS feed, but we shall see. Maybe this.
You'll get a blue screen here pretty quick.
You think? Well, maybe somebody wants to bet. They said they've got a 2-hour project.
Oh yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. Let's see if anybody. I haven't checked my email. Let me see.
Yeah, honestly, because I've never, and again, maybe Bob would know, but I've never heard them talk this much ever. In fact, I've never heard them say anything ever.
Trying to see here. It doesn't look like anybody has emailed me. So again, I'll put it out there. Jeranism at Yahoo. If you want to bet. And I think it started at about 7:15. Does that sound right? 20 minutes?
Well, we got a good 20 minutes of blue screen prior to the whole thing started. So really the bet was lost in the beginning, but we'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say that from the time that it went live.
Go back and say it's time from the time it came back from that blue screen.
Yeah, we were a good 25 minutes in, I think.
Yeah, don't see any email yet. But we'll see. keep an eye open, keep an eye on it.
And, back to what I was saying before, people will argue, well, even if they faked all this, even if all this is faked, it doesn't matter. And my whole big problem with that is NASA specifically, and people say, oh, well, it's a civilian organization, but in 2017, they're going to get an increase. They're going to have 20 billion, that's 20 billion with a B, dollars just in tax handouts. So just the government hands them $20 billion.
9 zeros, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or no, 20 would be 10 zeros total.
Yeah.
20 and
1, 2,
9
3,
zeros.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, it'd be 2 and then 9 zeros.
Two
It's a lot.
zeros, 9
It's more,
zeros. It's a lot of money.
more money than you could possibly imagine, ever.
Absolutely.
That's just for 1 year. And it's actually going to be an increase from last year or this year, which is only a mere measly 18 point something billion. But on top of that, NASA gets, and I'm not sure if this is public domain. Chucky holding your money. I don't think he was specific about the figures, but in the NASA State of the NASA address a few weeks ago, he said or proclaimed that they were projected to or had already gotten, I think it was 15 times more than the last 15 years combined in terms of private investments, or it was something like that. 25 years, 15 years combined.
Yeah, they did a ton of private investments.
Tons. And I think that is that undisclosed since they're a federal entity, or do they have to disclose
I don't think they
that?
disclose it. I've never found any of that disclosed. I mean, the biggest joke to me is still the fact that of all the patents that they have, and when I say thousands, I mean literally thousands. I'm not making that as a joke. They have over 1,000 easily patents that NASA has gotten for different inventions or whatever. But what they do with those patents is they then sell them to companies like on the open market. And then the companies then take that patent and create products with it and then sell them back to us. Well, it's like, hello, it's our tax money that created NASA. NASA operates on our tax money. So if anything was discovered or invented, then we paid for it. Yet they'll sell it to companies who turn around and sell the products back to us. It's like,
no, that's exactly right. And that point goes so deep in our culture. And I brought this up a couple times, but the whole idea of a corporation was supposed to be to fulfill some public good, basically using tax dollars as the capital, as sort of an investment. And what was supposed to happen, like if your corporation set up electricity and lighting or waterworks or whatever the case may be, highways, toll roads, but whatever the case is that was supposed to benefit the public good. And that's what a corporation was supposed to fulfill so that we could have sort of, a thriving society. But the whole thing is sort of mutated into this very corporate, I guess you could say corporate fascism, where the corporation is the be all end all sort of never ending cash sucker upper, that, they do provide services, but instead of freely benefiting the public who really are the initial investors to a lot of these, especially public works, we just get screwed. And you're right. I mean, NASA, they claim to have, I think it was 1,600 new inventions every year. And if they're actually selling those patents off to private companies, then we as initial investors should be getting a return on that. So that's people should be really mad about this. But then again, you realize that like one of their inventions is Teflon, which I've recently learned contains a chemical closely related to PFOA, which is basically anti-testosterone, anti-human, anti-reproduction chemical, which falls right in line with this whole eugenics Georgia Guidestone sort of agenda that we're all very familiar with. And NASA seems to be right on board with.
Gee, I'm looking at the other feed so I could see where they're at. Right now, they're flying right above Europe. So, I mean, there should be, there's like, where's all the land? Supposedly they're going, and they should be coming up on the dark here about 5 minutes.
Now, look, if those are chemtrails, I believe you see those lines of clouds, 3 in a row, they're just now going over them. Three very straight lines.
There's some land. I do see some land now.
Yeah, but if those are chemtrails, I mean, just think of how close they are. There's no way that that's
We have
250 miles away. Now, of
and
course, they'll say, "Oh, that's a storm front," but I don't know. They look like
codec, and hopefully,
well, it was 3. Now it looks like 2.
See what they come out looking like when they go through this little.
Yeah.
Now, I guess I'm confused. When we saw the sun rise, oh, so it's gonna set behind him. I was confused for a second because we saw the sunrise during this feed, right? It came up. That's what we saw. Then it went to blue.
Was that this video?
Well, it was. I think it was. I think it was. I think it went to blue screen after that, but then came back from the blue screen. So I think it's still the same, meaning that the sun should set behind them because they're about to get to. Hold on, now I'm confused because they're flying the same. Let me see, they're flying east. See, because it gets confusing because the Earth looks like it's rotating the wrong way here, but it's because the space station is supposedly flying a lot faster than the spin of the Earth. So actually, the space station is flying east and the Earth is spinning east. It just looks like it's spinning the opposite direction. Does that make sense?
Okay, so basically, the space station is traveling in an eastward velocity. Well, I thought it doesn't sort of go southeast and then
Going
northeast.
southeast right now.
Okay,
Yeah,
but
it's above Europe and it's going to go below Australia.
okay, and what you're saying is that it's essentially outrunning the alleged spin of the Earth by some thousands of miles an hour. So the
Correct.
Earth appears from this frame of reference to be rotating in the opposite direction. But in fact, this footage does look very real, but I think that they're just using a common fisheye lens. Again, I've explained what I think they're doing. Just a common fisheye lens with a 3D model overlaid on top of that. And it does look very believable, but it's something that could be achieved, certainly with $20 billion a year. Hell, you could probably do it for $2,000 or certainly $1 million.
Real, then you would be able to see lights. I mean, for instance, we can see the ground right here, right? If that's the ground on the lower left down by, say, 7 o'clock, if that was the ground, then you would be able to see lights there shining clearly at night if that was the ground. But then they'll quickly here when it goes dark, it should be dark, maybe another 5 minutes. Because right now
we're over England, so it's what is that, the moors?
Over Syria right now.
Oh, okay. I was going to say the prairie deserts of England, but okay, Syria makes sense.
You go Syria, then Iraq, and then it will kind of dump out in between like Africa and India, which should be coming up here shortly. And then it'll be dark by then. So it'll be dark before it hits the water, supposedly, according to this thing. I'm watching the little ground tracker thing. But again, it's so easily done. And I think you described it perfectly too when you were talking about the changes in views based on the direction that they're going. So you said they're going south right now. They kind of go south and they'll head back north. And if you look at the night views that they have, they'll have like the stars basically spinning as if you're looking at Polaris. So you'll actually see the star trails, which would not happen on the ISS because the ISS would have to fly directly over the equator in order to see to the left or right the perfect circular star trails. Well, they don't fly over the equator.
That's an interesting observation. And what I'd really love to see? I'd love to see the ISS take a either time lapse or long exposure capture of the North Pole star and surrounding stars from the ISS. And I'm curious to see what they would come up with for that, because that would be very difficult to fake. And
that's the thing. That's what I always bring up is there's so much opportunity for them to prove that it's real, that what they're doing is real. They could have gone to the moon tomorrow with a little probe, land that thing on the moon with a camera on it, and drive up and show us the rover, drive up and show us the LEM the way it was left.
I would still be very skeptical.
But they would never show that, because they would have to match perfectly the way it was supposedly left, where it was left, exactly what it was supposed to look like. I mean, there's just no way that they would ever, it's too hard for them to do. They would make mistakes. And this isn't 1960 anymore, to where 1969, to where they got away with a bunch of mistakes because they had years and years and years to correct them. And now with the way we have recording apparatuses and the way that we have live footage, there is no more chance for them to get away with that. I mean, if people had computers like we have now and had recording devices and even if they had VHS recording devices, people would have been able to record the live footage on the moon and be able to show us now that it's not what they showed then. There's no way to look at that now. So they were able to change it, adjust pictures, redo pictures, get rid of ones that didn't work right, create pictures that would work. So they had years.
Yeah, like the rock on the moon that clearly had in Times New Roman the letter like C or D on it, and they like photoshopped it out later.
Yeah, so now they're about to go into the dark here.
And one thing that I noticed, see at the very bottom, they're just about to pass these clouds. You can see the shadows of the clouds on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it just goes to show that they're not nearly as high up as they say, because I'm sorry, if you were 250 miles away, you couldn't get that sort of angle.
Right. Because how high are clouds off the ground?
You know, they're within the troposphere. We're talking just a few miles at the most.
Probably 5 miles at the most.
Yeah.
Because when you get up to cruising altitude of a plane, you're always above the clouds. So in a plane is 35,000, so say 7 miles at the most. So you're exactly right. If you're looking at 7-mile clouds and seeing shadows like that, you're not 250 miles high.
Yeah, so and it looks like they're fixing to pretty soon hit the terminating line, the twilight zone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And do you want to double down and see if it goes blank
Oh, it
in
will
the
go
twilight zone?
Make sure if anybody bet me real quick. Let's see here. Doesn't look like any bettors. I did get one email from somebody who's watching, but they weren't betting. They were just pointing out that the chemtrails and yeah, look at that shadow over there. I wonder if you could just do some math on that, on the displacement of the shadows. I mean,
yeah, to me it's just fairly obvious that you couldn't get that sort of point of view of the shadows of the frickin' clouds, but hey, what do I know? I'm just a stupid flat earther.
You idiot.
All right, here comes the terminating line.
This come to me
now, and so they are in the southern hemisphere, right?
Not yet. They haven't crossed the equator yet. They're
okay.
Kind of in the I don't know. They're about to pass. Like I don't even know those. I'm trying to think if I know any countries around there. Qatar, Saudi Arabia area. I don't know what other countries are over there.
And I'm just amazed that not even one single grain of sand sized or pebble sized or baseball sized meteoroid has hit the ISS in the 45 minutes we've been watching. So
no, nothing.
They've been very blessed so far.
This is crazy. I just love that blackness.
Here we go into the twilight zone.
Look at the part of the Earth that's still blue up at the top there. Over here.
Yeah, I see it. What is this, like Siberia? It looks like it's covered in snow.
I actually think they're supposed to be over water now. And the lighting going off will be classic. It always is.
Yeah, but notice how now the sun is behind us and this side should be lit. But before we saw the sun, way off in the distance in front of us, and this side was lit. It's just preposterous what they try to pull off. Why is it
still blue over here? Like, which way are they? I'm trying to look at the map and see if they're flying in a way that would make that, but it doesn't look like it.
And see, this is where they say, you can see the ISS's reflection after it's gone through the terminating, point, because it's higher up, and so therefore the sun sets on it later. Up.
Womp 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 womp.
So
who lost? Who bet me?
What was the one on Price is Right? The ODA guys, the little mountaineers.
What's it called? Oh man.
Odio. Yeah. So whoever bet, I said double down. So whoever bet 1,000, 2,000. You can make your checks out to the Morgile.
Yes, please do.
And jeranism, we'll just split it either way.
Send it to Globebusters.
Yeah.
You'll be fine. You just need to write Globebusters on the envelope. They know how to get it here.
Station Houston on 2 for Oleg.
Now, hold on a second.
Oh, we got audio.
That's a problem here because the blue screen means that there's no connection.
Okay, we're glad you were able to contact your family briefly.
Oh, this is good. I'm glad we're getting this.
KU. I'm working with Moscow now. We'll see if we can replan to give you additional times. I'll call you. Either Moscow or Houston will call you back.
Ooh, Moscow and Houston.
Well, why do we have a blue screen if they're able to communicate?
Yeah, they were on the phone with their family through pretend
KU.
land.
We are out of KU time, and we're coming up on an LOS.
LOS.
Loss of signal.
Oh, LOS. Yeah, loss of signal.
I mean, it makes no sense. Why don't they use one of their satellites?
Advise, when we come back, AOS in 12 minutes.
AOS.
And they come back in 12 minutes?
Yeah. Well, where's all the tens of thousands of satellites that they can bounce their signal off of? I mean, come on, this is basic.
It's so ridiculous that they say that.
Han Solo, Chewie, Chewbacca 101. I mean, come on, guys, just bypass the flux capacitor and
loss of signal. What a joke.
Maybe it means line of sight? I don't know.
Yeah, but regardless, I mean, there wouldn't be. Why would like NASA doesn't have stations everywhere?
Yeah.
So ridiculous.
NASA and their Lie-mobiles.
Interesting, though. They're going loss of signal, right? And they're flying over the Southern Ocean, which is exactly where we know that planes don't keep track GPS-wise. Okay, now I'm getting somewhere. See, this is good.
Yeah, shenanigans.
So if it is, let's say they are flying somewhere. I'm saying the plane or something. Maybe that's the whole thing, is that it can't keep track of it during the Southern Ocean because there is no such thing as satellites. And it loses track with ground stations.
Well, something else I've been sort of thinking about is just sort of toying around with the assumptions of, say, an AE projection where everything's a perfect circle, the 90-degree north latitude is a point, and instead of thinking of it like that, thinking of the 90-degree north latitude as sort of an elliptical ring, and the sun's path being an elliptical, not a perfectly circular, but an elliptical ring. And, if you're talking about an elongated ellipse in terms of the path of the sun, that could solve a lot of the problems that people think that there are in terms of the sun not coming up where it should in an AE projection. But then if you think of that far end of the ellipse where it's sort of a very almost a 90-degree turn or 180-degree turn, if that's somewhere way off in the middle of the Pacific Ocean or whatever, then there's really not going to be anybody there to observe it. And so I've just been sort of toying around with the idea that the entire latitude and longitude assumptions are wrong. And so that's why we have these anomalies or these inconsistencies in, because if you're looking at the globe, you've got this huge, basically half of the globe that's nothing but water. I mean, has someone actually gone to all of those latitude and longitude points to confirm that that is, exactly the way it's purported?
Right.
Or maybe we're missing something, or maybe we're assuming that there's more than there is, or I don't know. I mean, it just seems to me that there's lots of different things that the sun could be doing that we may not be aware of just simply because we haven't observed this thing from every possible vantage point, because that's technically impossible unless you're going to, set permanent settlements that are going to observe the path of the sun out in the middle of the Pacific.
I wonder what these circles would be. I'm looking at this screen here, which, I've already drawn this out. When you take this and do it Cartesian to polar, you'll get a perfect circle. But even on the globe, what would this orbit look like?
So that's a polar orbit of the ISS?
I'm looking at no, the yellow circles are something else. Whatever this says, USKR, PRKR. This orbit here would go, draws into a circle. But I'm just wondering what this would look like on a globe. Why do we have things taking circles like that on a globe? Seems weird.
Yeah, the only thing I can think is that it's like a polar sort of orbit. I don't know, but I don't know what those circles are supposed to represent.
Me neither.
But I know that polar orbit is something that they claim is done for different sorts of observational purposes, but of course, if there is such a thing as an orbit, then they're just sort of zipping around the center of an AE sort of projection, or just traveling, close to the north, however you want to look at it.
And I'll have to draw it out because it would make more sense. But I've actually taken the Cartesian to polar. So you take the round, and I've looked at where the basically the space station would hit the sun and hit the terminator each time, and it's the timing is way off. And that's why I know that they have to shut the cameras off, because basically if you're going in a circle like around an AE map, and the way that see how the orbit, let me go back to this thing, you can kind of see. So see how the orbit goes, each time it falls back a little bit. So this is 2, this is 3.
Right.
Each time the orbit's going to go back a little bit, go back a little bit. Well, if you take that and look at it on a AE map, well, each time the sun orbits, it's actually going to not be 90 minutes. It's actually about, 90 minutes is a full circle, but it's going to hit the sun or hit the terminator in about anywhere from 30 minutes to like 47. And so they can't have that, because that doesn't make sense in reality. There's no way it would do that on a globe. You figured that the plus or minus would have to be within minutes, not that big of a difference. I'll have to make a video about it, because I looked at it, and that's what led me to know that, oh wait, they always have to turn it off, because no matter what, it wouldn't be right. This looks like it'll be right, meaning this comes up here and you're going to hit the dark line, exactly the same time every time. So you're going to hit this dark line, then the next time back you're going to hit this, because remember, this dark line's moving with it, right? Meaning,
right. Yeah.
So I'd have to draw it out for you to show you that. That's why I know they have to turn it off. They can't show us an actual succession, an actual video that shows you the sunrise to the sunset. They can't show you that whole video, because it's not done in the time that it needs to be done on a globe.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I see what you're saying. And then sort of like as the cherry on top, when the sun does rise, the freaking thing is lit from the wrong direction. And so,
right.
There's just so many problems with it. And I'm glad that,
now, could it be the sun on a flat Earth?
again, I think that, the best way to fake something is to mix in as much truth as possible. And if that means taking real high altitude flight and manipulating that with something as simple as a fisheye lens,
could it be a pink sun?
Yeah, right. Is that a real image?
Really, from their footage?
Oh. Yeah. But it creates the illusion of reality, because they're taking real.
Holy shit!
Wow, is that the Earth or the sun?
They got you both in the wrong way. What is going on?
That must be in like a different spectrum.
Oh, how quickly they fix it.
But so anyway, in them mixing, truth with total deception, it definitely gives it the air of reality. We're all familiar with the Lord of the Rings movies. The first trilogy cost $300 million, and that was for the whole kit and caboodle. That was for part 1, 2, and 3, $300 million. And one of the best, I think, one of the best aspects of the movie was just the beautiful cinematography, and they used the natural, New Zealand setting. And of course, they elaborated on it a little bit, but they used a lot of natural, real settings in order to sort of support the illusion. And so I think that's a lot of what NASA does, is that they're actually using really real high altitude flight footage, but they're sort of manipulating it in a way, and then adding in either scale models or probably CG models to complete the illusion. So. And there's lots of different scenarios we can point out that are evidence of that.
Absolutely. This I don't understand either, but
it says Japan on there. I guess that's where the Japanese astronauts sleep.
Yeah, they're working in here,
playing with water, flicking water all over their computers,
ping pong paddles, and
doing backflips,
growing lettuce, passing the mic back and forth. Have you seen? There's this. Oh man, I wish I knew the channel name. There's some guy I saw him yesterday. He's got 90 subscribers, but he's actually bought a harness. And if you haven't seen this yet, I was dying yesterday. He's bought a harness that he's hanging himself from this harness, and like he's doing with chroma key, putting himself in the space station. Like, you haven't seen it yet? Oh man,
I haven't seen it. I'll have to check it out. Or if you can remember the channel name, definitely plug it. Because so what is it? Pretty believable, or is he sort of joking around with it?
He's definitely joking around. Because he had some kid gets on the thing and asks like, "Why do you always have your arms crossed?" And he's pretending like he's Scott Kelly. I actually think he has a condom on his head. But the kid asks like, "Why do you have your arms crossed all the time?" And he says, "It's because I'm too fat." It's just hilarious.
That's funny.
It's pretty funny.
Isn't he the one that went to space and like gained 20 pounds or something?
I don't know. I just know his brother's the one that supposedly married to Gabby Giffords, who I can't stand.
Yeah. Mark Kelly and Scott Kelly. Good old American is apple pie sounding names, though, right?
What was that?
Everything's
Earthquake.
nominal.
Oh, not earthquake. Spacequake.
The spacequake was nominal.
What is going on? It was shaking.
Looks like they're extending the litastic interferometer. Something. What the crap? What was that? Did everything just change, or was that I get. Oh.
I don't know what's going on. Is this the Earth underneath here now? See that blue light?
That's the.
Oh boy!
Wow. NASA, you suck. You suck at space.
Space.
But like they said, it's hard to be NASA.
Yeah, real hard.
I think I'm gonna write a song.
We still got blue screen on the live feed. For anybody thinking of betting, is anybody thinking of betting?
Yeah, you can still open bets. I mean, we can do it all day. What did we say? 1 full hour? Is that it? That's all they've got to do is 1 full hour.
I got somebody here. Oh, really? Somebody sent me. I won't say his name in case he didn't want it said. He made this blender. You know what blender is?
Blender, like, is that like a margarita or?
Not that kind of blender. I think it's like a 3D creating software.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he says, I made this blender in 5 minutes while watching your video without any camera or equipment. Cheers from Brazil. Yeah, it just looks ridiculous. You just basically put like you said, a layer over it and the earth and bent it. It looks ridiculous. It's like so easy for them to do, especially with their unending budget.
Yeah, but really, I mean, I could take and I haven't done this, but maybe I should. I could take, like, say, high altitude weather balloon footage that's relatively still, and fisheye it, or even take fish. Well, no, that'd be kind of hard. I'd have to fisheye it myself, and then take either a 3D model with some textures on it. I wouldn't want to spend too much time on it, but I mean, it could be done so easily and so believably. And the question was raised. And I don't know, what do you think on this, Jaron? Is like, why does NASA stuff look almost like they intentionally make it look fake? Whereas, like, if you watch the movies like Gravity and the Mission to Mars or The Martian or whatever, like, or the new Star Wars, which I finally did see, the space scenes and the planet scenes and the spaceship scenes all look very, very realistic. Although you can sort of still tell it's CGI, they look very realistic. And my thought on it.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, my thought on it is like, it's almost as if the grittiness, the graininess, and the fakishness to it, like the good old 1980 quality of the movie-ishness of it, makes it more believable. But what do you think? Because they do have a budget bigger than any of the
because of what
Hollywood.
They've done in the past. They handicap themselves by putting out what they did in the 70s, 80s, 90s. So, for instance, you can't now come out with something that looks totally different than what you put out in the 90s. I mean, even in the early 2000s, if you go back and type in STS 60 and STS-40 to get different shuttle missions from the early or late 90s, you can't come out with something that's far superior as far as what space looks like, because we could just match it up with what you've already shown us. So I think they've handicapped themselves by putting out what they did, which is exactly the reason they can't go back to the moon, is because the moon would have to look identical to what it looked like, not identical as far as the undulations and things, but I'm saying even the curvature seen in the moon and the craters seen, they can't make it better now because it has to match what we've already seen. So I think that's, in my opinion, that's why they can't do anything better. They can't make it spectacular, because you could go back to just 10 years ago and say, hey, well, how come you have shown us this? I mean, you saw that video with the guy with the thumb, right? We can see your hand now. We can see your thumb.
Oh, yeah.
That's funny. I mean, when you look at those satellites get deployed, and what a joke. I mean, did you see in the video I just did where they released that one spacecraft and the arm bends down and shoots? That's supposed to be real. It's like,
right.
It's ridiculous.
Was that the one like you've done within the last couple of days, or did you just put it out? Yeah, I saw your most recent one. Yeah, it's some of the claims are so ridiculous. I mentioned in a video, the Mythbusters, those two guys.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what they did was, and I may have told you about this, I don't know, but they made basically a vacuum chamber that was, I don't know, it was a big cube, maybe 6 feet by 4 feet or something. The big cube that was a vacuum chamber, plexiglass, you could see into it, with a replica of an astronaut's glove that goes inside of the vacuum chamber.
Oh, I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so basically what they did was they sucked out all of or most of the air out of the vacuum chamber. And so there was a negative pressure in the vacuum chamber, which caused a positive pressure in the glove. And so basically what the guy, I forget which one it was the bearded one. Well, I think they both have beards, but anyway, he was showing how difficult it was just to merely, move his arm in this, because the suit's positively pressurized, space is negatively pressurized. It almost took all of his might just to move his arm, let alone, do tedious tasks with his fingers, because the fingers of the suit are also pressurized in a negative pressure environment. And he was surprised at how very difficult it was to do simple things in these, in this environment. And yet we see 1980s spacewalks where these astronauts are doing, they act like they're underwater, doing things like they are underwater, and it doesn't appear as if they're in this positive pressurized suit environment in a vacuum, which would technically make it almost impossible for them to move, because you got to understand, you have to have fulcrum to move. So they'd have to hang on with all their might with their left hand just to bend their arm and screw in one screw. And they're just up there floating around, they're like, yeah, it's easy as pie. And it's just contrary to physics. So yeah, I mean, there's just lots of different things where we can call NASA out and say, you guys didn't really think this through, did you? Because your lies are just, it's just a plethora of lies, El Guapo.
Yeah, basically you have a choice. You can either just say, I'm going to trust NASA no matter what they say and not look at the evidence, or you can be a real human being and say, no, I'm going to look at things and make my decision up for myself. And that's what you basically have. You either have to put yourself into one of the other columns. If you're somebody who says, I've looked at the evidence and that's led me to believe that NASA is real, then I'll call you a liar. And that's just it. I mean, there's no way that you've actually looked at the evidence and actually used your own mind. The problem is, and this is where I say science has handicapped humanity, is science has played itself out to be, you're an idiot if you don't believe in science. And part of believing in science is believing in evolution.
Station Houston, space to ground 1 for Oleg.
Is believing in the moon landings, is believing in the spherical Earth. Those go along with believing in science. So you either have to be all in or okay with being called an idiot. And that's what it comes down to. And so there's so many people that are afraid of being called an idiot.
Alec, we're very sorry for the problems that occurred earlier with your PFC, but we're glad you did get a few minutes with your family. And from talking with Moscow, we understand that we will not be attempting to reschedule the conference.
Oh.
Does that mean I don't get my KFC?
No KFC.
Okay, thank you for help.
Next time.
Very good. You have a great day. And break for Yuri. We have your family standing by, ready on Space to Ground 4 for your PFC.
And you know, I'm sure their families believe they're up there too. Even if the astronauts know, I mean, let's just say these guys are all Masons, you know, which most of them are. I mean,
I don't think those guys. I know it gets crazy when you start thinking about that.
Houston on Space to Ground 2, just to let you know, Space to Ground 4 is private, ready for your PFC.
I think they're brainwashed. I don't know
Maybe.
how or what, but I mean, I think it's kind of obvious when you look at Armstrong and you look at Neil Armstrong and you look at Buzz, that I think that they were brainwashed. And I think slowly over time, Armstrong kind of realized it, and there wasn't a whole lot they could do. You know,
And that interview though, it was that first interview they all did together when they came back after they came out of quarantine or whatever.
Okay, so imagine that have you ever been hypnotized? I haven't been. I don't think I'm hypnotizable.
I've never been. I don't think I am either.
Right. And I went to a hypnotism show, and I probably haven't told this story enough before because it's important in my life, that I was I went to Reno with or maybe it was Vegas. I don't remember which one, but I went with my parents, and I was underage. I was like 16 or 17. So I wasn't old enough to obviously gamble and do that kind of thing. But I remember my parents bought me a ticket to to this hypnotism show. And I happened to sit with this family of like 5 or 4. It was a mom and a dad and a brother and a sister. And like at the beginning of the show, they asked people to come up and audition to be up on the stage. And this kid says, this, boy, hey, I want to go try it. And his parents like, no, don't do that. And he's like, no, I just want to go stand in line, see what happens. And they're like, whatever, go do whatever you want. So he goes and stands in line and ends up getting picked to be part of the 12 people or whatever that were on stage. And over the course of this whole entire show, he ended up being the one that went the furthest, meaning slowly they start kind of eliminating people until they got to this guy. And at the end of the show, he walks with bare feet across like burning broken glass with like fire underneath it, walks right across it. The whole time seems like he's in a trance or something. So the show ends, he goes back to sit down, and he comes back, and the whole time his parents and sister were tripping. They were like, and I happened to be sitting at this same like booth-like table with them. I got put there. So, I mean, unless they tried to do this whole entire show to fool me, nobody else saw the things I saw, which like his family tripping that he was doing this stuff. They were like really honestly scared. Mm-hmm. And when he came back, he sat down, and then they were like, okay, I'm going to snap my fingers. He doesn't know that he did anything. So like when he came and sat down, his parents like, what are you doing? And he's like, what happened? And the guy says like, he doesn't know yet. I'm going to snap my fingers and he's going to remember. And he didn't know. It was the craziest thing to me. So I was like, okay, when you hypnotize somebody like that, he had no idea. He came back and sat down at the table and like was confused as to what his parents were talking about, what his sister was talking about. I'm sitting there like, what the hell is going on? So I just kind of realized hypnotism is so much deeper than we know. So you can actually hypnotize somebody to the point of them not remembering anything. So imagine that you hypnotize those guys that went to the moon. They get back, they get out of quarantine or whatever. You've hypnotized them to think that they were there, but it's hard for them to answer questions because they weren't really there.
Yeah, and I think there may be something to that. And yeah, in terms of hypnotism, there's definitely something to it. In fact, my wife's mother, many years ago, she had been a cigarette smoker for years, like 10 or 20 years. And she really, really wanted to quit, but she couldn't. And there was this guy, I don't remember his name, but he was a hypnotist, and people recommended him that he could hypnotize you and you'd never smoke a cigarette or touch another drop of alcohol again. Lo and behold, my wife's mom went to this guy, did a session, and she never touched a cigarette again. So it actually worked.
Wow.
I've had people try to hypnotize me. It didn't work on me. I guess either.
Well, there's a very small percentage of people, and when before this event, because it was like in Vegas, like I said, there was thousands of people watching, maybe 1,000 people in the audience. But at the beginning, there was like a line of probably, I don't know, 100, 200 people that had gone up there, and basically the hypnotist guy was like doing a quick 5-second, 10-second interview with each person.
Right.
And I guarantee they can just see, and that's why NASA gets all these crazy amounts of people who apply. Like, for instance, Bill Nye applied to be an astronaut like 6 times and got denied every time. Well, that's because I guarantee he's not hypnotizable. So
Huh.
that's where they choose which people can become astronauts. I mean, look at the people that are the astronauts. They're not smart. I mean, you would think that if you're going to pick the elite crew of, thousands of applications, we should see geniuses up there. These guys don't look like geniuses. They don't talk like geniuses. In fact, if you go back and look at some of the old STS missions from even 20 years ago, 10 years ago, I mean, there's people up there that are outright stupid. I mean, you
Yeah.
see it. They'll like bring the camera around and what are you doing right now? He said, fixing some brackets. Just like,
Yeah, it's like Lurch from the Addams Family.
right. It's just like this guy just was able to be hypnotized. Now, I don't know if you can, maybe would you, if you put them inside, you see, but you would think like, can't they just look outside and see they're not? I don't know. I mean, then you start losing me. I don't really understand how that all works because I think that they are mind controlled. And I don't know if it's as easy as putting them into some apparatus and then they think they see the earth outside of it. I don't know if that's how you can hypnotize people or if maybe, huh?
Well, the thing is I think it's possible. I mean, hypnotism is definitely possible. The power of suggestion is very, very potent, especially in the hands of a trained hypnotist. I mean, there definitely is something to it. On the other hand, you've also got sort of this mass hypnosis that's being achieved and sort of perpetuated through the mass media outlets very blatantly.
Oh, yeah.
Which was what allowed for the whole deception, I believe, in the first place. But in terms of the astronauts, I mean,
That's a tough one.
so many of them are, known Freemasons, and not to just, categorically say that all Freemasons are liars and evil, but when you get to a certain level, and even in the lowest levels, they take a blood oath to not divulge the lodge secrets, or they'll literally be murdered in all sorts
be pulled out. And it also says you have to protect your brethren no matter what. You'll never rat them out. You'll never put them in harm's way.
Right. And so, Masons tend to say, it's just, it's a fraternal order, and they downplay it. But the fact is you can't necessarily trust somebody who's taken an oath to lie to the very, death, to their death if necessary, to protect their lodges or their, worshipful master's secrets, or even their, Masonic brothers' secrets. And so just the fact that the majority of astronauts, especially in the Apollo missions, and I believe even to this day, are Freemasonic. NASA itself is very obviously an occult, esoteric organization, and so you just can't trust these guys.
No, you can't. I mean, that's why they just get you lost in the whole thing. But one big thing for me, and I still go back to this, is imagine that you're Buzz Aldrin or Neil Armstrong. What excuse do you have for not swearing on the Bible that you went to the moon? What could possibly be your reasoning to not do it? Meaning, if you went to the moon, then you would easily put your hand on the Bible and swear that you went. And by not doing that, by refusing to doing that, I mean, what could be more clear? To me, it just seems like it's such a proof, which sounds crazy because to people they might thinking, well, why
Well, it's circumstantial, but no, I definitely see what you're saying. I mean, if they went, it shouldn't be an issue. But if they didn't go, and maybe they know something that most people don't,
right?
And they probably have a conscience, but I think that they also sort of screen for psychopathy in terms of astronauts and police officers, but they don't like screen for it in terms of filtering it out. I think they screen for psychopathy and narcissism in terms of promoting it, because those sorts of people are easily controlled. I mean, I can very easily see there being some locked in some safe somewhere, drunkle Buzz getting busy with, I don't know, I don't even want to speculate. Let's just say several prostitutes, for example. And I'm not saying that's the case, but I could easily see that being locked away in some vault somewhere, so that not only does Drunkle Buzz get murdered if he tells this truth, but then his image and his legacy gets ruined by these, whatever bizarre tapes. And it happens all the time. I mean, we see it coming out with celebrities who appear not to be towing the line in terms of the mainstream narrative, right?
Absolutely. All right. Well, we may just shut it down. I don't see anybody betting me, but to everyone that's listening, you get a double dose of John and I today, because in what do we got? 3.5 hours at noon, John will be joining us on Globebusters. That's on my other channel, youtube.com/Globebusters1. And we're going to be attacking the Flat Earth meme video, I guess. Did Bob tell you what we're doing today?
Nah, but we can wing. I can wing it. No worries.
Easy. No, somebody put out a video called the top 25 Flat Earth memes. And basically, he goes through the 25 excuses that flat earthers give to say that the earth is flat, and then tries to destroy each one of them. And so we're going to go through those one by one and re-destroy his ideas. So they're all pretty simple.
Delicious. Yeah, I just love it when they take these straw man arguments and just try to destroy these like totally bizarre nonsense straw man arguments, and they're like, haha, see, the earth is a globe, but in fact it's just ridiculous. So yeah, I look forward.
I love when they put forward Occam's razor, like what takes the more assumption, and then you look at their globe model and it's like, holy smokes, everything's flying and moving at crazy speeds, and it's just ridiculous the amount of things you have to concede to believe in the globe. And I don't see evidence of any of it. I don't see evidence I'm spinning. I don't see evidence I'm flying through space. We just watched tons of video where we don't see any stars. There's just too many things you have to simply give up your own senses to in order to believe in the globe. And again, if it came with a bunch of proof, if it came with evidence, then absolutely I would say, you know what, my senses don't mean anything because I've seen the proof that tells me that I live on a globe. But it's the opposite, and it's the fact that they taught it to us when we weren't at an age where we could have argued with them. I mean, you're a kid. I remember even going home and asking my mom, like, we live on a ball? She's like, oh, yeah, that's what science is determining. I mean, obviously all of our parents believe that, so it's kind of, we were stuck. We didn't have the opportunity to question it. We weren't at the age to question it, so you just grow up and you believe it. And pretty sad that they were able to pull this one off, because it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I thought I heard Missa in the background there. Hey, Missa.
Hi.
She said hi.
Hi. Yeah, man. But yeah, I think that this whole thing was a logically viable theory for a good portion of time, and then at some point, it was obviously discovered by the powers that be that the whole Copernican model, the whole Einsteinian theory, gravity, all that was wrong. But instead of sort of, just owning up to it, starting from scratch and being honest, they decided to capitalize on it, which, that's what they do, the capitalists.
And I've changed my tune. I won't really say anymore that gravity is fake, because I understand people think that the action of something falling on the earth, they believe is the name given to that is gravity, which I'll say that's fine. I'll even say that if you want. I'll say that if I hold up an item and drop it, it's going to fall to the earth. And if you want to call that gravity, fantastic. You can call it gravity. But the problem becomes when you then say gravity is what is keeping the moon in orbit around the earth, because the moon is falling and that we are falling around the sun. I mean, none of that stuff, then it all falls apart. And that's where I have a problem with gravity. If you want to talk about on earth that things tend towards the ground, like you said, what goes up comes down. It doesn't, I mean, people go, oh, it falls towards the middle of the earth. Well, call it that if you want, but that's just your locality. It doesn't mean that they fall towards the middle of the earth, because if we were on a flat earth, it would fall towards the ground in front of everybody. And that's just towards the ground. It means it falls towards the earth. It doesn't fall towards the middle of the earth unless you've then proven the earth to be a ball, which the whole idea of living on a ball is ridiculous. Just the other day, I was looking at a picture of the moon, and imagine that people supposedly flew there. Like, what if they landed on the bottom of the moon, at the south pole of the moon? You think they can land there upside down? And people, no, to them it was right side up. Well, you're creating a fictional storybook. It's not reality. There's not things like that exist. You'd have to show me evidence of that, and they can't show evidence. It's just words. And so to me, it just becomes painfully obvious that it is all words. None of it is provable. And that's one thing we missed growing up, is that where's the portions that prove what you're saying? Where's the proof that the earth is a ball? And you know what? If NASA was true, and I've said this before, same thing with going to the moon. If we went to the moon, then everything else that they say is true. If we went to the moon, then you're right. We know the distance to the sun. We know the distance to Jupiter. We know the size of Jupiter. We know the size of our moon, the distance of our moon. All that stuff is absolutely true if we went to the moon. But if we didn't go to the moon, then you need to realize that all those things that they're saying have never been proven. There is no proof that you know the distance to the sun, that you know the distance to the moon, that you know the size of the moon, that you know how big Jupiter is. I mean, what was that? Oh, it's crazy that, I mean, I'll look through my telescope now and look up at Jupiter, and it's just like, who the hell says that that is 100 times the size of Earth, or 1,000 times, whatever they say it is? Who could say that? It's a dot. It's like ridiculous that. Now, again, if we went to the moon, then you have to know that based on everything, gravity and the way trajectories work and the way angles work, that they knew the size of Jupiter. But if we didn't go to the moon, which for anybody who's ever reviewed the evidence is painstakingly obvious that we didn't go to the moon, then you have to ask yourself, well, where is the proof of anything? It means there is no picture of the Earth. There is no trajectories. There may not even be orbits. And that's where I got my, there is no satellites, because I don't think that there's even such thing as an orbit. I think that's a hypothetical thought process that Newton came up with. That basically the whole idea of, oh, you launch a cannonball and you can either launch it too far or too short or perfectly, and it will just miss the curvature of the planet and then come back around up and hit you in the back of the head. It doesn't make any sense. It's like, that's not realistic. That's pretend in pretend land, and none of it makes any sense. I don't understand how gravity would work on behalf of the sun. You know, the sun's pulling the Earth towards it, so it's going around its orbit. So when it goes around the back of the sun and comes back the other side, why does it not pull the Earth? Why it just lets it go? Go ahead.
Well,
Earth, go on your orbit.
And the other thing too is, like, gravity is supposedly the weak force in terms of like, as opposed to electromagnetism. But when you ask somebody, okay, the very sparse and like very like not dense, like very thin atmosphere right up at the edge of space, how is that possibly compelled to not expand into the infinite vacuum of space? And of course the answer is gravity. And so gravity must also act like the walls of a vacuum chamber, if you will, separating the upper atmosphere from space. And it's like gravity does all of these wonderful things, but again, gravity is just a theory. That's all that it is. And for people to, it's a very much a cop-out as far as I'm concerned. Because, yeah, gravity causes us to be stuck to the Earth. It causes an apple to fall. It causes the moon to orbit. But we don't notice the gravity of the sun. Like, we've never measured the gravity of the sun, even though it should be tugging, pretty wildly, or, on the Earth at some points of its inertial travel around the sun. And yet, the gravity of the sun, the gravity of the moon is all undetectable. Well, they say the tides are related to the moon, but again, all of that is just theory, and it seems like the theory doesn't even match up.
Let me run this by you. I don't know if you've heard me say it yet, but let's say we got a huge rock, and I'm talking 5 miles by 5 miles. It's a 5-mile diameter rock. Okay, and we pop it right down on the ground in, I don't know, LA. So there's this huge rock, 5 miles high, 5 miles wide, and we take a marble and we stick it to the side of the ball. Now, is it going to fall to the Earth, or is it going to stay stuck to the 5-mile big rock? It's going to fall to the Earth, right?
Of course.
Okay. And then if you ask somebody, why is that? They'll say, well, because the Earth is the bigger gravity pull, that the small 5-mile rock doesn't have any pull on the marble, just the huge Earth underneath it does. Which, if that was the case, then when the moon goes around the Earth in its orbit, and it's in between us and the sun, it would go to the sun. It would not stay in orbit of the Earth. It's ridiculous. I mean, none of the stuff that they say would work in reality. It's all just conjecture and nonsense, and everything just fits perfectly. Antonio Subaratz, yesterday I was listening to a video he did where he's actually really brave. He was basically in like a hangout with like 6 globe believers. And at the beginning, I was kind of like feeling bad for him. Like, man, this guy's brave, but he's kind of getting his butt kicked. Not really on facts. It just was like a gang up, like 6 people yelling, and he was just trying to talk. And he was trying to say that Newton's 3 laws don't hold up to scrutiny. And at the end of the call, he says, he's like, everyone's like, calm it down, let him talk. And he just says, okay, so you guys believe that there's an equal and opposite reaction to every action, right? And of course, that's the law of of motion or whatever. So then he says, well, the Earth, you believe it's spinning out in space, right? It's spinning around through space. So what's the opposite and equal action to that? And it's just silence. It's silence. And then he goes, and I'll be leaving now. Thanks, guys.
Right.
Not one of them could answer. They're like, don't know that one.
Yeah, well, and of course, the whole thing is, and this is the way it was put to me by the legendary astrophysicist from Harvard, Dr. Grinley. He said the Earth is a spinning top, or he didn't even say like a spinning top. He said it was a spinning top. And so if it's floating through free space, then there is no equal and opposite reaction. But my whole point of contention with that is if there is no equal and opposite reaction, then how can it possibly maintain any sort of velocity or spin? I mean, it's totally contrary to the laws of motion as we know it, just like all the other globe Earth physics. I mean, it's just the whole thing is contrary to the tenets of their belief system. And even Albert Einstein, who's touted as the genius with his whole theories of relativity and such, he had to throw out a lot of the laws of Newton, if you will, for his model to work. So it just goes to show you that science is very fickle. It's also very subjective when you're talking about theoretical astrophysicists or theoretical astrophysics, at least.
Absolutely. I found that one. Oh no, I lied. I thought it was this one. I thought I found the video that I was telling you about. You don't remember the guy's name that did the video where he's hanging from the harness, do you? His channel or the video name? I'll have to send it to you. I wasn't checking. Maybe somebody said it in the chat, but God, I can't remember his name. But yeah, I don't know where he got this harness thing, but he's like always swinging from this harness. That's too funny.
I can see your thumb. I can see your thumb.
So any final words before I see you again? And
we'll just pick it back up where we left off later on. I'm looking forward to it. And for those of you out there who aren't aware, I've now got 3 channels, at least for the next 4 to 5 weeks when my copyright strike is lifted. I had to wait 6 months. So I've been doing some live streaming on my secondary channel and my longer videos on my tertiary channel. They're all linked up on the Morgile, so definitely check that out. Don't forget to subscribe to my other 2 channels. Again, that's the Morgile 2 and Jonathan Christopoulos. So I'm not going to spell it, but they're all linked up as featured channels on my main channel. So, dude, it was awesome hanging out with you. And Miss, thanks so much for having me. And I will be looking forward to parlaying with you. And I guess Bob's going to be on later as well.
Yep, Bob will be on, and we'll be tearing apart that little video and going through that piece by piece, and we will talk again soon. So thanks guys for joining us. Sorry I didn't get you the bet you wanted to see. Maybe we'll do it again. Find somebody who thinks it, and you just go to my video that I released yesterday and go through the comments, and you'll see numerous people, every other comment saying, here's the link to the 24/7 video feed of the ISS, and here's exactly what you wanted, Jaron. And oh, by the way, one other thing I wanted to mention too, due to popular demand, I did create a petition because people were saying, hey, put a petition up. You do need, I think you put one up too one time, John, didn't you? You need 100,000 signatures in 30 days.
No, I put mine up for 100,000 signatures throughout the year of 2016. So I've still got 7 months, 8 months, something like that.
Well, I guess this one, I did it at the White House one. And the reason they do theirs, you have to you'll get a response from the president if you get 100,000 signatures in 30 days. But we just did it one day yesterday and we were at 200. So that's not quite going to cut it.
It's tough. I found it's tough to get people to sign petitions because there are a lot of people out there who are big proponents for flat Earth, but they're not necessarily ready to put their name and identity with that. And so, I think that the more it becomes normalized, the more people that are talking about it and open with it, that's going to change. But yeah, I found, I haven't checked it lately, but the last time I checked, mine had about 4, maybe getting up to 500 signatures by now. But yeah, it's tough. It really is.
It's tough. And I mean, I saw my video had 30-something thousand views and like 1,200 likes or something like that. And it only has 200 signatures. So would like to see some more, but I did put that up, and you can go there. An easy way to remember it is just j.mp slash earthcam, EARTHCAM. So it's a little shortened URL, j.mp slash earthcam. But if you could head over there and just sign the petition, basically demanding that NASA, or not demanding, it's basically a nice way of asking NASA to please show us a 24/7 view of the Earth from space. It's a no-brainer. It's our money that they're using to be out there playing in space, but really it's a ploy. I know that they cannot do it. And the way that I know that for the people asking that again is if they could, they would, meaning they would have been doing it for 16 years. You would not be seeing the blue screen that we just saw come up every 30 minutes if they could in any way, prevent that, but they can't. And that's the whole point, is that by kind of forcing their hand, we're going to force them to do something. And what I think is coming, here's my prediction. The prediction is that NASA is going to have to come out as being a lie within the next, I'm going to say year to 5 years. They'll come out and admit it, but it will be because the aliens told them to do it. This will be the tie-in with the alien, the whole disclosure thing. It'll be some ridiculous thing where the aliens told us to hide what the Earth looked like from you. You watch. That's my prediction, just because it's the only thing that's the only way out for them. There's no other way that they can just admit that they were liars or that they've been being deceptive. But if they come out like that and somebody at the top says, no, this was told that we had to do it, that'll be their way out. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely something to that. There have been a lot of influential elitist figures who have warned of such a false flag alien invasion, and I don't put it past them, honestly, because it's sort of the writing is on the wall, and it wouldn't surprise me if we saw something like that in our lifetime. But with the knowledge that we have now, I think that there's at least enough of us that we're going to see through it. So I'm optimistic, as always. What you had mentioned a point. I was gonna say something about it, but it must not have been important.
Sure.
Yeah, it was. I was gonna say something, but God, I can't. It's just like on the tip of my tongue, and I forget. What were you just talking about prior? I know I'm terrible.
The petition.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask you if you could Skype me over a link to that petition. I'll go ahead and sign it for sure. And for anyone out there curious, the petition I set up a few months ago is it's searchable. I think, God, I should have a link, but it's on care2petitions.org, and you can just search the Sovereign People's Movement to abolish the Antarctic and Arctic treaties. So it's a mouthful, but
I remember finding that, because that's important too. Is there would be no need for that deception if it was simply what they tell us it is. It's not a continent at the bottom of a globe.
Well, and if it is, I mean, it should be, it shouldn't be anything they have to hide. If that is what it is, then we should know about it. We should have a geodetic survey, and then it's, we'll all be a lot more knowledgeable in terms of the Earth. But until they get rid of that, and where it's only, it appears to me, militaries and certain corporations that are allowed to really, do their thing down there in the southern region, then we're basically in the blind. And of course, they use the pretense of national security, and they don't want to bother the wildlife down there. All of the snowflakes that live in the southmost region, right?
Millions of penguins.
Yeah, maybe some penguins if you're on that peninsula, but other than that, yeah, lots of snowflakes. We don't want to bother them in their natural habitat. So.
All right.
Houston on 2 for Tim Copra and Regen Recycle Tank Drain Forward Plan at your convenience.
Blue screens are nominal.
All right, guys. We'll talk to you at noon Pacific time. That's
we've got a plan here.
Yeah, I'm sure you got a plan. It's called Deceive the World.
For you guys, when folks are off the treadmill and you want to dive into this, basically the plan's going to be to retrieve an empty tubs from the PMN. And then tear down your config, basically remove the full brine yet bay and install.
They're telling them how to drink their own piss.
And then take about 5 minutes to try to attempt the remaining offload.
Nothing takes 5 minutes.
No.
Not clear what you mean by tub.
Not clear what you mean by tub. All right, guys. We'll see you in 3.5 hours or 3 hours, 15 minutes.
That's the funniest thing in the world. He's been saying tub the whole time. He's like, what do you mean by tub?
All
right, peace, guys.